Oh shit, dude! I'm the Spencer now. Can you believe that? What a world.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah, I did the
What an
countdown and
intro that
everything.
was. Oh shit.
That's how it is, man. Yeah, it's
I like
just
how close you are. I like how close you guys are. I'm too far away from the camera.
Oh, that's actually not even. You know, that's actually not even. Oh, I should change the title on my Twitch
good.
and stuff. Well, no, it's not even that though. It's just the fact that I cropped it differently because of the layering and OBS. I'm actually not even any closer to my camera. I just fucking.
I
You
see
just
you
like
in this
crop
one.
when you
See
crop
what I
it,
mean?
you got like a smaller section. I see. Okay.
That's all it really was, I think. And
I
it's
think
like
it adds to the intimacy.
okay. Well, if that's how you
I feel
feel,
like you're talking like.
You're right up in there.
I mean,
Right up in the gristle. Yeah,
that's
hey,
what
man.
I want. That's what how I want people to feel, man. I want them to feel like they're right at home.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
true.
I'm not afraid to get cozy.
Not
That
afraid
is
to
a
get
good
cozy.
lesson.
Man, dude, SAJAM, I gotta tell you, I've been watching a lot of your streams. I actually watch a lot of your streams not live. I watch a lot of them in VOD format, and I'm a big fan, dude. I'm a big fan. I'm actually trying to structure. I just wanted to tell you, I thought I'd start the show by saying this. I've been trying to structure my stream lately to kind of emulate how you do yours. I really like
That is
yours.
very kind of you, and I think you could totally do it, no problem. I think,
Cool.
as you guys have probably known, if you watch other Smash people do stuff, like Ludwig's a good
Yeah.
example. I think a little bit of structure and planning into what you're planning to stream for the day goes so long, and once you have a formula built in, it's like so automatic. You
It
know what I
writes
mean?
itself.
Yeah, it's like you don't even have to think about it. You just show up, you do what you want to do, you chit chat,
Right.
you get in there, and it, you know, like especially people like I'm sure both of you guys understand this too,
Mhm,
right? Like,
mhm.
when you go on to a stream,
Mhm.
people want to hear you chit chat, right? Like they don't, you know, they're there to listen to the person. They don't care so much about what you want to play or anything. There was one time where I realized like I was talking about something so mundane, and I was like, all right, guys, I'm gonna play the new Street Fighter character that just went out, and I watched my viewership just plummet.
Drop.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was just like so immediate, and I was like,
That's
God,
so
am I so dumb? Like,
Oh,
I was
shit.
mostly- yeah, I think last night when I saw your stream, you were talking about some anime that I have not seen, and
Okay.
you were rating the characters in a tier list, and it was like,
Yeah.
kind of whack. Yeah, and I was
Yep.
like, this is perfect. This seems right up your alley.
Right. I actually, that was literally last night. I actually need to post that tier list. I forgot to. Thank you for the reminder. It's actually open another tab. No, yeah, Bobby, we had this chat, dude. We were talking about, because remember, we kind of got into streaming, like, you know, when we were both at Twitch, when I was at Twitch, you're still at Twitch, and you made the same remark, which was like, dude, I feel like my best streams are, I'm just talking to the people.
Yep.
What do you think it is?
I was just, I don't know, man. When I think about like watching Melee, don't you want to watch like the best Melee? Isn't it
Yes.
true that like we have years of VODs available where you go back into the history and like, you know what I mean? There's just so much available. Like, why do I want to watch somebody practice?
Right. That's how I feel. Yeah, that's the thing about
trying to hang out with that person. Like,
you can't, right? Then everyone's
Yeah.
different, right?
I don't
It's
know.
I feel you. It's like okay, if Mango's streaming Melee and I'm streaming, it's like who would you rather watch? Who would I rather watch? And it's not even about me.
depends on who they are, right? Because like when I think about in Falcon, anyway, it's like Rockman or whatever, and
Mhm.
like Senshi, like if they were streaming themselves labbing, their whole brand is that. So like that's probably what you want to see. But then they're talking about that and just being themselves, doing that. So that's what they do.
Bringing your full self to the table. Yeah. No, I had a good talk with Ludwig about this actually the other night. Where I was talking about kind of because I think his whole persona that he puts out is like he's this goofy dude who doesn't really. Like he doesn't really. He's just kind of. He's kind of like he like plays it up like to be a little dumb, right? He's like acting dumb or whatever. I don't know how to describe it, but like
it's so clearly calculated.
it's so calculated.
It's so clear.
calculated. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Presentation.
Yeah,
If you've ever streamed, you know he's got a plan, right? Like the kinds of transitions and music he's got ready. Like the thing is you don't even. It doesn't even need to be fancy. Like my best stream ideas have come at like 2 a.m. I'm trying to fall asleep. And I like snap up in my bed and I reach for my phone because I'm like, I need to write something down.
That's good.
One time I was about to sleep and I thought to myself, like, I was just thinking about some match in my head and I was like, I don't even remember what it was. It was some match. And I was like, why is it that this guy is like a defensive player in my brain, but that guy's not? And he plays that way. And I sat up and on my phone, I wrote like 5 paragraphs. And then the next day on stream, I was like, all right, stream, it's time to chat. Like, let me explain. You know what I mean? It just, it kind of when it hits you, when some topic like that hits you, first of all, you need to get it out of your body ASAP, right? Otherwise, the more you forget, the worse it's going to be. So the next day on stream, I was like, all right, chat, who cares what happened today, right? I don't care about the 1984 Olympics. It's time to talk about this topic that's been in my head all day. So yeah, that little bit of like, I think if you both of you guys would be the same way. If you wanted to do a stream, all you have to do is like think to yourself, what do I genuinely want to talk about? Because as long as you're interested in it, people will listen to it. You know what I mean?
Dude, I had this thing like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, man, like, it was like about 2 weeks ago. I was like, man, like, okay, if I want to do streams on Smash topics and stuff, and I'm like, I can't think of anything, and there's quarantine going on right now, you know, so there's not really tournaments going on. There's not much going on. I'm like, damn, like, I want to talk about, I gotta do this. Okay, I gotta talk about, you know, I want to talk about Smash and stuff like that. I want to talk about all these exciting things that are happening. But there's nothing going on, and I couldn't think of any good topics. And then I went for a walk, and I basically walked to the grocery store, right? And I took like one hit of my pen, and I was like a little high, and all of a sudden, like all of the fucking like memes and jokes and things people say about like how the great musicians were on drugs and all that, I was like, oh, I get it now. Because I walked to the store, I had like 4 ideas for fucking good streams. I was like, oh shit. I started thinking about like Leffen's Fox. I was like, man, how is Leffen's Fox more consistent than all the other Foxes? Like, they beat him sometimes, but why is it that he's, like, slightly better, even though they look really good? When I watch Leffen, he looks, like, just a little bit better. And I was thinking about all these different Smash topics. I was like, damn, I can do streams on so much shit. And I realized, like, once a week, I made a little commitment to myself. I'm like, once a week, I'm going to get a little high and walk to the grocery store.
That's a great idea.
Right?
What do you think it is? What's the difference?
I don't know what it is. I think it's just, you know, actually, I can tell you. I think it's, like... I think there's
theory, so I want to hear what you think.
Okay. Well, I want to hear your theory when I'm done. But I don't know. I just think it's like, I almost think that when you're, I don't want to turn this into a fucking me talking about how everyone should smoke pot or all that shit. But I guess it's legal in California, so whatever. Yeah. I was gonna say I feel like sometimes we're so in our own heads about like kind of our preconceived notions of what people would think are cool, or what people would be into, or people. So it's like. I feel like sometimes I have like maybe an idea will start coming to me and then I'll filter it out. I'll veto it immediately. Like there's like a force in my brain that's like, people aren't gonna think that's cool. People aren't gonna think that's cool, and right. But I feel like in that, at least in that mode I was in, I was like, I was very just open. You know, I would just fully entertain a thought when it came to me. I wouldn't like shut it out or something. I don't know.
Can I tell you what I think it is?
Yeah, tell me.
I think it's that. Like, when you say people won't think that's cool,
in
my mind, when I have that thought, I'm thinking people won't think that I'll be cool if I say that. If you can remove yourself from your mind, right? You don't have any of yourself in it. Now you're just thinking about Leffen's Fox, and Toph does not appear in your mental idea.
Yeah.
Then it's just all interest.
Right.
Like when you're thinking about yourself, when I'm thinking about myself, oh my God.
Like trying to describe it.
Even when I play, right? Whenever I'm thinking about what does it mean for me if I win, you know, I really want to be able to blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
I feel like when we're thinking about ourselves,
it
ruins everything.
It puts the ego in the picture.
When I think about stuff to talk about on my stream, I never think about myself delivering anything that I guess I never really would have thought about that. There's like no feeling of myself delivering the information. Like I have to say it. But yeah, that is an important thing to think about. I mean, dude, you know, you guys know, people love hearing you guys talk about everything. First of all, clearly, it's why you guys have a talk show. But also, you know, whatever it is, because every time I've ever watched you guys talk about anything, you're not fucking talking about Smash. You're always talking about anime or philosophy or top 8. And I feel like
it's the game too, though. Do you know what
there
I mean?
was like so.
It's like one step removed from Melee. I feel.
Sure, yeah. It's. There's a part of it that is related to the match and what's happening, right? But at the same time, like so much of it is tangentially related to it, kind of, right? It's like kind of out there. So when I ever hear you guys, I'm always like, what the hell is going on? I feel like I have to start from the beginning or I've missed it. You know what I mean? It's one of those.
That's interesting.
That actually might be that actually almost feels like good feedback. That almost makes me feel like I need to bring people in more so that they don't feel like they need to catch up at the beginning.
That's always been the goal in my mind, right? Like bringing people in, like no matter when they come in, you know, in like the course of a block, a 2-hour block.
Yeah. Well,
But then for the people who are around for the whole thing, like you kind of need, you know what I mean? You need something for them. You need something for everybody else.
yeah, it's like tying in a joke from like the beginning of a set to like the
We
end of
love
a set or
callbacks.
something.
We love callbacks.
Little callbacks.
Yeah, like you gotta have the callback. Yeah.
You're a callback guy, SAJAM.
I feel like you do
Yeah.
that. Like I feel like you love them and I love them. I don't know. Maybe we just both love them.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That's for the true fans, right? Like everybody else will just think you guys are a little weird, but that who cares about them? The true fans will be like, oh,
The true
yeah.
fans, yeah. Dude, so much, honestly, so much of my, like, commentary, like refining it over the years has been, like, kind of honing in on the true fans. Because I think commentary is one of these things where, you know, I always say that in everything, there's two ways to get better, right? There's patching your weaknesses and there's playing to your strengths. And I think that in commentary, it actually makes way more sense to play to your strengths. I mean, you got to patch your weaknesses to a certain degree, obviously. Like, you know, if you can't enunciate or you can't, I don't know, you don't know about the game. Obviously, there's a certain degree where, yes, obviously. But I think if you want to, like, really stand out, because, you know, there's so many people and and everyone's kind of interesting in their own way. If you try to just, you know, if you try to make everyone like you, you're going to be run of the mill, I think. And I think that all the best commentators, basically, like, they're so identifiable because, you know, you got to play to your strengths.
So I don't know if this happens with you guys, but one big thing that always happens in fighting games is like when someone gets invited, who hasn't done one before, gets invited to like a CPT event, or they get asked to do Evo, or like a large event, particularly in like a stadium type venue, like anything really big. I feel like this happens to hype commentators a lot. They show up and like it sounds like they're on ESPN. They're like, all right, everybody, welcome to this big event. And I'm like, bro, that's not you. Nobody has ever hired a commentator and been like, I hope they show up and they're not themselves. I really would like you to show up and just act completely differently. All that stuff you did before, I hated it. That's why I hired you. Like, that's never what happens, right? Like, I don't know why they show up and they act so weird and different. And it's like, dude, you should just be yourself 100%. Because if they hired you, that's who they want. They don't want anybody else. Like, I don't know. People have this weird, like, expectation that they have to be something else. But, like, if you're good enough to be hired by this person, it's because they enjoy the stuff that you've done previously. It's not because they expect something new.
I think that totally happens in Smash.
I want to know how'd you get to be that way? Where's that attitude come from?
Yeah.
Which attitude?
Like what the kind of thing? What you're saying is, you know, that everybody, and it is true, right? You should be yourself. Like generally, you're your best self when you're being yourself. People find it difficult to do that sometimes, you know.
Right.
Like a lot of people work at it very deliberately, and I'm just wondering, you know, is that something you've worked on? Is that just how you are? Tell me more about that.
I think there's a couple of things. As far as it relates to commentary, I was going to pay both of you a compliment. It's sort of a compliment. It's kind of like a backhanded compliment.
I love it. Great, good.
Like the best kind. So a long time ago, when I was learning how to commentate KI, Killer Instinct is like a super fast-paced game, right? And one thing that's unique about it is that in combos, there's lots of interaction between the players. So on there's no downtime. You know, when you get hit in Marvel vs. Capcom, you're like, well, I gotta watch this, right? But in that game, there's a lot of interaction. Every hit of the combo, the opponent can try to break it. And if you try to break it and you say, I know you're gonna try to break this combo, you can counter break them. So there's like constant interaction of you won't, I will, I don't think he's gonna, wow, you actually did that. It's like every second of the game. And so I thought to myself, to learn how to commentate a game like this, I should watch Smash, right? Because similarly, there's interaction mid-combo. It's a game that's so fast that you can't discuss every minute detail of what's happening, or you'd sound like an auctioneer, right? So I was like, let me watch Smash. So I was like, let me learn how to do analysis. I turned on top 8 commentary of you two at some event, and I was like, oh, cool, Scar and Toph for commentating. Let me listen. And I watched for like 40 minutes, and I heard nothing about the match. It was like you guys were on some... I don't even remember what it was. You guys were like, let me tell you.
If I thought it was a good one or a bad, you know, because I wish I knew.
I don't know what it was.
Killed it. And then others, I feel like, you know, maybe I wasn't there or whatever.
Well, the reason I say it was great is I watched and I was entertained for all 40 minutes or whatever I watched. And while watching, realized I learned nothing about doing analysis for Killer Instinct, but then realized, like, you know, people love this, right? Like, you guys are so natural. And I realized at that time, one of the other weaknesses I had was I didn't sound natural enough when I was doing commentary. So when Steve and I would commentate, you know, he's a very natural, he's like one of the most charismatic humans on the planet, right? And so by comparison, nobody wants to listen to me next to him. So I was like, man, I just need to chill out. And I realized the environment I was trying to create was like incorrect. And it needed to feel like me and Steve were on the couch, chilling, watching an event, and you were like in my kitchen grabbing a snack. That's like the kind of feeling that needed to happen there.
Yeah.
And so that became not only the goal, but like what I needed to be expanded to. So yeah, for me, I've never not done what I wanted to do, but what I realized I should be doing has changed.
Yeah.
That's
But
really
what about,
really good.
Sometimes it gets hard. For a lot of people, sometimes it's hard to just show up and be themselves. Maybe they feel like there's stakes, or maybe they feel, something. Does that happen, or do you feel like it doesn't really happen, or you're fine with it?
Yeah, for me, it's like I don't ever know if I have that kind of feeling. I don't know if it's just like the natural competitor in me, or that I love public speaking a lot, or what it is. But that's not something I ever have grappled with, and I think a lot of people do. Right? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, so I was talking to Homemade Waffles a bunch recently, and one of the things that I really respect, that I feel like he's a god at, is staying like grounded. In other words, like we can get too abstract and then lose like, something more fundamental. I feel like what you're talking about is you're like grounded in this like simple reality that you should just be yourself. If you never think about it too hard, it won't. You won't, like, get lost in that problem. I feel like I've thought about everything.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean about overthinking. Well, there's some things that I do think about really, like, maybe too much, right? But it is never about being myself. That's like not the stuff that I think about, like super in depth of like I should really just run through all of the situations. Like, what are you supposed to do? What are you not supposed to do on commentary? Because I have like a list of rules that I don't think people should do and stuff, but a lot of successful people break them all the time, including myself. So you know what I mean? It's like one of those things where you kind of think about all that stuff and what you should or shouldn't do, but at the end of the day, who you are and what works for you is always going to be different, right? I can't really tell someone, hey, what you're doing right there is not okay, because yeah, I think someone who is like really naturally grounded like that will be fine no matter what. You don't have to tell them anything, you know what I mean? Like they'll be fine. You don't, you just like, yeah, you'll run it. No matter what you say, people will love it. Like Waffles is a good example for sure.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about the whole kind of, KI smash thing, because I feel like for me, I don't know about you, Toph, but for me, when I first felt that vibe of like, hanging out on the couch and like wanting that to be a thing, that was no question from Tasteless and Artosis. What's interesting about that is that they probably did it for completely different reasons. Like StarCraft is so slow that they needed a way to like fill, But for me as a new player, I didn't really get the game, and what I loved about their commentary was that vibe, right? The feeling that they created when the game was slow. And so I feel like we kind of, or at least I took that into Melee, and I feel like if it does work, it's because Melee is so fast that like if you try to say, right, if you try to commentate every interaction,
right.
I love that what you said, you're like an auctioneer.
Yeah, and it's like this out of shield and that out of shield and recovery. He can cover this thing.
Like,
it's too much.
You won't have any idea what this person's saying. It's just noise.
Yeah. One thing is, so I do a lot of analysis, right? And I realized in fighting games, our time is so short, right? We don't have a long time to discuss with the viewer, to talk about. I mean, the time you have to talk about the matchup is like when they're getting on stage, when they're sitting down, until the match starts, right? That's like your entire. It's so brief compared to watching other games. Like I watch TI every year for like Dota, and I watch like all the league finals, and I watch a lot of StarCraft too. So like when I compare it to those games, I realized a few things. Our games are so short, right? So you have to be extremely brief and very concise. And also, as like the analytical commentator, when sitting next to Steve, who I work with a lot, but whoever I'm working with, whether it's Yipes or Steve or whoever is next to me, I'm the voice they want to hear the least, right? Like, because when I'm speaking, I'm saying something like, boo, that's so boring. It's this, God, he's explaining this again, and who cares about this? I want to hear Yipes say scoops and Nathan's hot dogs and all these other things. Right? So when I do say something, what I've really worked on a lot is, in those moments where all these interactions happening, you have to be good enough and know the game well enough and know the matchups well enough and the players well enough to watch 20 interactions happen and pick which one is the most important to explain, not only for like the high level player, but just in general as a spectator. You know what I mean? So being able to like sandwich down and like kind of smush in everything that you're like watching and then compartmentalize it and like really just be super concise is like, to me, the most important skill that I've worked on. And that's one of those things that I've thought a lot about. That's one of the ones that I've racked my brain about.
I kind of want to challenge that though. Have you ever heard me talk about Tasteless and Artosis, my StarCraft journey?
Yes, I've listened to you guys talk about these two obsessively. But
do you remember the part where, I started out being that guy who's saying like, shut up, Artosis, I want to hear Tasteless. But then
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, man, at a certain point it flips and they legitimize each other in a way, or they kind of bolster each other, where it's like, once I got to mid-level, I wasn't even like top level when I started thinking to myself, oh, Tasteless, shut up. Like I want to hear what's really going on. I don't know. I feel like it was super cool how it was almost like a handoff.
Yeah.
They like kind of paved this path for me to get really deep in. I thought that was really incredible.
Yeah, and so for me, when I say that I'm brief, I talk a lot. But when I do speak, I want to make sure that it's always what I'm saying is the most important thing I can say every time, and it's the shortest, most like direct version of the information, and then it's like this is how it needs to be delivered. So it's not about like only let the other guy speak all the time, because there are times, especially when I'm with Steve, he's great at this too, is when some really intense stuff is happening, he doesn't even, either he won't talk, or when I stop talking, he will ask me a question like, no, what was that right there? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? He's great at recognizing moments where he, as the hype guy, should just be like, nah, I want to know what's, like, dig under the hood, right? Like, what's really happening here? You should expand more on what's going on. And I think a lot of people are like that too. I've noticed that, like, when you're with more experienced commentators who are known for being exciting, when they run into situations they don't know, or they want like more information about, they're fans too, right? They're not just going to be like, oh, like, they're just not going to start yelling. They're going to be like, wait a minute, let's go back, right? Like, what is even happening here? They're genuine fans of the game, and they kind of run into what you're mentioning, where you have so much respect for the person you're working with that you want them to talk more. You're like, no, I don't even want to say anything. I want you to talk. Like, you're a genuine fan of the person you works with, like, body of work, so you just want to hear more from them. That is like a very genuine feeling, and I think it happens a lot in commentary. I'm sure you guys are the same way.
I think me and Bobby have that for sure.
There's just like so much mutual respect that you want to say something, but you're like, I want to hear what you have to say first, so then I can come in and like say something about what you're about to say.
That's really beautiful, actually. That's really good.
It's hard to train that too. I feel like it's just like something it has to come from a natural respect of the game, and also the players and the person you're working with.
Yeah, I almost feel like I only really get that at a particularly deep level with Bobby. I don't feel like I think you have to work with like almost a specific person to train that, because like I definitely commentate differently when I'm commentating with someone like Bobby, who I feel like I can really trust, and we have this like obviously this kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like symbiosis or whatever. Like we bounce off each other. Chemistry. Exactly. Yeah. That's the word. That's actually the word I was looking for. Thank you, Bobby C. And but the contrast, like when I do, so like I don't know, if I go out to an event and I am commentating with someone I've never commentated before, or like someone who's newer or whatever, and I just can't really rely on that sense of chemistry, I really feel like I have to. I'm very different, and I end up talking a lot more, I think, in the latter case, where sometimes they'll be quiet, not for any particular reason, but they just don't really know what to say, or and yeah, it's just not the same, I guess. And it really is a good feeling when.
I was just gonna say, I've realized too, the more I talk on commentary, the less I trust the person I'm commentating with. I've realized that is definitely a noticeable. If you hear me discussing things more, it's because I do not trust the other person to handle the load. You know what I mean? The more silence you hear from me, it's the more of a sign that I'm comfortable working with whoever I am. Because when you finish a sentence, you're like, wow, that was really clean the way he did that. I think he was probably expecting this in this situation. And then you just wait and there's like nothing. And you're like, okay. And also I think that it's great. You have to like kind of jump back in there, or you wait and then like whatever they say after, you're just like, like it hurts you. And you're like, no. And then you're like, okay, I got to get back in there. It's like, whenever we talk about like commentary like that, it's a lot like learning a matchup in a game, right? Is like you have to get the feel for how your co-commentator likes to speak, or what they like to say, and what they can cover comfortably. So yeah, when you know the matchup like the back of your hand, you're chilling. But when it's a new matchup, you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. It's so weird.
Some moves I haven't seen. Yeah. That's definitely the case. I've definitely been there. I don't know. I used to kind of pride myself on being, in terms of Melee, at least I was kind of the guy that I felt like I was the most comfortable with like the most number of random people. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of thought about this a lot, like how to commentate differently, based on who I'm commentating with. Also how to commentate differently based on, and this is I think what me and Bobby I think did a lot was basically commentating differently based on kind of the context of the set or the tournament. Like, what is it, a pool set? Is it top 8? Obviously, that's going to be a little bit of a different vibe. What kind of tournament is it? Is it like a local or like a regional, or is it like a big deal? Is it a big important set? And kind of, I feel like Bobby is really, really good at sort of setting that sort of tone. And I feel like that's something that really, right? I feel like that's something that a lot of you know, newer commentators or whatever, like they don't have that kind of change in tone to reflect the kind of the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like we were talking about that at dinner after Genesis. I forget why, but the Genesis that the most recent one.
Yeah,
and,
I remember that.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to give voice to the vibe sometimes. Like, the viewers at home don't know. It might be that you know and everybody in the whole stadium knows. You know what I mean? That like this debate's important, but if no one says it, then the viewers don't necessarily get that. Like, just from camera work or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, I for whatever reason, I feel responsible for like making it look a certain way or feel. I feel responsible for the feel. But yeah, sometimes I feel like when I listen, it kind of seems like it's kind of happening, and no one's deliberately making the feel. You know, it's just kind of whatever's happening is happening.
Yeah, I almost want to call back to something SAJAM said, which is like, you know, kind of creating a certain vibe, or like this is kind of the kind of vibe I want to bring to the table. Yeah. Like for me, I remember when I was getting really into Smash, and I kind of became a fan, was when I was watching a lot of Homemade Waffles and Phil back in like 09, and what I thought they did the best was the vibe, because when I watched them, I was like, damn, I actually really feel like when I listened to specifically them commentate back then, I felt like I was like at the tournament with them, you know, like in the crowd, and I didn't feel like anyone else really had that effect on me. So I was always in the back of my head, I was kind of like, well, that's kind of what I think really good commentary should do. And so I think I always kind of had that as a goal in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but there's also often this feeling for me too of when you hear things that are so buttoned up, you know what I mean? Like you hear it in sports especially, but in a lot of esports, you can tell that they've been like esports classically trained. I don't know how else to put it, but like there's a specific sound, there's a specific cadence.
We talk about the lab that Chris Seglia has where he grows commentators, you know.
Dude, whatever. When people come out of that lab, I'll tell you what, they're shiny and they can get the job done. But it's like there's the soul and feeling that is important, right? And when the more buttoned up you become, I feel like the further you are removed from that a lot of the times. And so sometimes I'll be listening to stuff and I'm like, I just want someone to just sound like a human for 10 seconds. You know what I mean? I'm like, just sound like a human, like give it to me. You know what I mean? And you need that kind of feeling. Otherwise, I don't think, you know, because the people that are doing this stuff presumably are massive fans of the game. And if, when you're like doing something, if you sound as equally excited, which is flat, about the State Farm analyst desk as you are about the sick match that's coming up, it should, you know, you should sound obviously more excited for one than the other. It's your job to sell both, but you should feel that someone is more genuinely passionate about what's coming up than what's going to happen. And yeah, that kind of feeling of you and your friend are chilling at a tournament, or whatever the stakes are, even if at the highest level of something like Evo, you can still maintain that feeling at least a little bit in the back of your mind. I think that's important.
Oh, I love that little bit. I love just like, you're like, it's like you're in the stadium and it's very serious and you're wearing a suit and all that, but you just have that little kind of callback to like, the fans at home know this is still, you know, this is still SAJAM and Steve, or this is still the Scar and Toph broadcast. You know, kind of thing.
It has to be, right? Because otherwise, like, you can just put anybody in there.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you said it. Like, why did they hire you to do it? You know, because that's, you know, that's your pedigree. That's what people want. That's what people want to hear. I really like that.
Mecha Scar and Mecha Toph.
I've been Mecha Toph. I don't like being Mecha Toph. I've been here.
I made a joke about that, about how they'd have hologram Mike Ross announcing. And it would be hologram SAJAM reading all the ads. You'd be like, well, in case you didn't know.
They like machine learned viewer engagement, you know?
Yeah.
Like an algorithm.
Rotating slowly towards whatever the sponsor. Ugh, it would be bad.
Like every 2.5 minutes, there's a little joke.
Dude, SAJAM, do you have any tournaments that, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you're the kind of guy that, I actually didn't even really start doing this until recently, but do you have any tournaments that you're like particularly proud of in terms of your own commentary?
there are tournaments where I feel like I walk away feeling like that was the best work that I've done and stuff like that. But to me, it's more about the work, right? Regardless of where I am, because I'm sure you guys are the same way. Sometimes you'll be on like a local stream with like 80 viewers, and you'll just do something that's so you're like, man, that was good. Why have I never done that before in my life? And you just feel so satisfied about it. Yeah, I don't know if there's like a tournament that I would look at as maybe like that, but I think for me, actually, last Evo, the Dragon Ball finals, I did feel that way after.
Oh, yeah, that was.
I remember this has never happened to me before, but I remember that in the match, I felt like I was playing the match from both players' perspectives at the same time, and so I felt like because of that, the amount of stress on like you know what both players are looking for genuinely. Like at this range, this player wants this character wants this. You know, it's one of those things. But I felt like I was so tapped into what both players wanted to do at the same time that after winners finals was over, I had a headache that was so bad. Like I couldn't shake the headache because I remember being so incredibly focused on the match and what was happening that like I legit was exhausted by the end of the winners finals. Like we took the break and my head was just like throbbing.
Wow.
And so yeah, the Dragon Ball finals there, I think was probably that. And I remember when it was over, Steve stood up and was like, bro, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what you just did. But if you did that every time, no one would touch you. And I've never heard, like, he's never said anything like that to me before. And I didn't think about it until he said that. And I was like, damn, was that good? I have to go back and listen to that.
Yeah. Wow. The thing you just said about the perspectives, like, I've never been able... I don't think I've ever really been able to do that. The whole, like, watching a match from both players' perspectives, I feel like almost always I have to kind of put myself in the shoes of, like, one. Yeah, and I can swap back and forth. And I'll actually do that sometimes. This is something me and Bobby used to talk about, was, like the secret recipe to commentating Hungrybox set is to try to watch it from Hungrybox's perspective. Because people don't usually do that. People usually, because Puff is just kind of an unpopular character. I think that's the main reason people. But it's actually like usually the best commentated Hungrybox sets or when you try to watch from his perspective. But
that's so funny,
right? But
I do the same thing on Justin sets for sure. When people are watching Justin with Play Minot, because when he plays, he's hitting 3 buttons the whole match.
I've seen,
he's doing 3 things.
What is that? What is the little move where there's the ball and she does like that? Is that like
crouching jab, which goes half with Minot. She's got her heavy punch.
Okay,
right?
That's
and
the best. Okay,
crouching heavy punch.
Okay, I've seen all those. Yeah, I've seen all those. I was gonna say, that one where he does the little low one, that crouching jab. Yeah, he does that a lot. Yeah, and, you know, it's funny because I heard some, I heard someone say, "Oh, all Justin Wong does is crouching jab," and then I watched one of his matches. I was like, "Oh." Because usually they're like, people are like exaggerating, like, oh, this guy does this. And I watched it, I was like, oh shit, wow, this is really boring.
They don't lie. He does nothing the whole time, and he'll love it every second of the match. Like, I do the same when I'm watching a Justin match. I do the same thing because to explain that to somebody, you have to say like, Justin is stuffing the dashes and he's beating the jump and he's beating this. So you just like, look, what is his opponent trying to do? He's trying to dash in here. Justin stuffs that. He tries to jump. He can't do that. Like, how do you stop this guy? And people are like, damn, Justin. You know, you did a good job in a set, by the way, when after it's over, you hear people discussing it. And the way they discuss it is like, it's not just wow, I hate Justin. He's bad. But it's like, oh, man, did you see the way he stopped this and stopped that? You know what I mean? Like when you hear people discussing it after and you're like, oh, thank God. Like people are actually discussing that.
I have seen that happen. Probably upset.
Isn't it like a good feeling though? You're like, damn, did we do something right?
It is a good feeling. It is a good feeling.
Of course, make it so that it's not just like biased opinions.
Biased opinions.
I hate Hungrybox. Puff bad,
yeah, all that shit. Yeah. Which we've definitely been on that side too. I mean, that was like kind of our earlier commentary was like people would give us flack for me. Yeah, I knew I made it when someone. There was a Mango Leffen match like more recently. And I saw a comment on the video that was like, man, these guys are so biased towards Leffen. I was like, I made it. I made it as a commentator. They said we're biased against Mango. I was like, all right, we did it. We're there. I thought it was so funny. But you actually felt like in that Dragon Ball finals, you felt like you were actually kind of occupying both perspectives kind of simultaneously on that one.
I forgot. Someone in the chat put it. When I stood up, Steve told me, he's like, I didn't speak for like a minute and a half. You had me in a genjutsu. He told me, you had me in a genjutsu. I didn't know what to say. He's like, I just wanted you to keep going. So I just didn't say anything. Like, there was definitely moments in the set where I felt that way, and I think it was because for a tournament like, you know how it is with both of you guys, right? You're on the set, you don't even know who's going to come up on stage next. You're just looking at your phone, like, what's the next bracket? Like, you know what I mean? So for us, we don't have a lot of prep that we can do outside of ourselves, right? So obviously for a tournament like Dragon Ball at Evo, I studied a lot for Sonic and for Goichi the year before because they were both in the finals. I did the same thing that year, and I study for all the players I expect to make it far. And then once top 8 brackets are out, you know, you kind of prep for both of them. But I came so ready and watching so many hours of footage of both of them specifically, and really thinking about how to describe all their play styles, really thinking about how to describe the decision making that happens, that once the match happened, I was so ready at every moment on screen to be like, what are both players most likely to do? What's going to happen? So in that set, I was like almost uniquely prepared. You know what I mean? And I was kind of lucky, but it was a safe bet that they would be in the finals. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like a safe bet, but I was lucky that I prepped so much for that match and it happened, because there was a tournament that I prepped really, really hard for a specific player, and they just like drowned. You know? And I never feel bad when that happens, because that I'll see that player again. You know what I mean?
Right.
Player you'll never see again, and that prep will come back around. So, you know, it kind of comes back around like that. But it is always satisfying when your prep pays off like that, I think.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what tournament? I'm just curious. What tournament was that?
It was the Bonchen prep. I prepped really hard for Bonchen at a tournament. I think it was maybe TGS when he went 0-2. Like it was like he just got destroyed round 1 by like a Balrog player from Japan, and it was like really bad. And I did a lot of prep on that, and it was a lot of prep that I had done that paid off at Capcom Cup, because I commentated the Smug and Bonchen set there. And dude, I put like a little highlight on Twitter, but there was like 5 times in the match where I was like, Bonchen's gonna jump here, jump forward, and then he just jumps forward right into like Smug, and I'm like, yeah, he like has EX uppercut here like every time. So the next time this interaction comes up, he's going to jab, right? And then like the situation comes up, and then he does exactly that, and I was like, man, like all that prep that I had done 4 months ago when he got washed was like perfect for this moment right here. And then so I felt uniquely prepared again for that set months and months and months later, you know?
That's really good. It's good in a game like Street Fighter. I feel like that could be scary in a game where people are swapping their characters and swapping their teams more often.
Oh, yeah.
Because then it just goes out the window. It's like, oh man, I prepared for Sonic and Goichi, and then new patch drops. Now they're playing fucking, you know.
Yeah, like, but I'm like, you know, I'm a child. All the games I've ever played have been patched a lot, so I have no problem like adjusting to a new patch quickly. And like, you know, I'm the Twitch monster. I'm always watching all the VODs, and like, there's never a time where I don't have like a fighting game up somewhere, right? Whether it's in my brain or if it's on a screen. So
I remember those days.
Yeah, you're a Street Fighter 4 player.
Changed for me, Toph.
Yeah, at some point, it's a lot. It's a lot to do for sure.
Yeah. I missed I remember when I was working at Twitch, I worked for Matt Bollier, my engineering manager. And he always had a Street Fighter stream open. He was such a Street Fighter. Like every who would he watch? Just I mean, he'd watch Justin. Basically just whoever was playing. Right? He was a Chun. Oh yeah, that's a good. No, Sean played Chun, right? He played.
Sean played Balrog.
Oh, Sean played Balrog. Yeah, he was a Chun-Li player then. I remember one of those guys was a Chun-Li.
One of those, right?
Yeah, one of those. One of those.
Fucking, you can never trust players, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
He got a lot better.
Who?
This is neither here nor there. Matt.
Oh, good.
I played him to the last time. Yeah, he got a lot better.
That's dope. He played 4? Because I only started playing Street Fighter. I played Street Fighter 5 for a bit. I didn't really play 4. Yeah, that's dope.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. I miss those days. That was like Crackfiend would come to the office and yeah, it's a different era for sure.
Dude, your guys' office game room is out of control. Like I actually have only been to the newer Twitch office, I guess. But when I went there, I couldn't believe there's 15 people playing Smash in the middle of the day, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
There's so many. I was like, I don't even know what's going on. I was like, "Is this like you guys have a break?" Or and everybody's like, "Nope."
No, not really. Yeah, dude. I used to play a lot at the. Well, fucking, that was the problem. There was that one office we had for a while where the game room, if you remember, was in that little cubby, and then it wasn't even really a game room anymore, or at least the Smash setup. Yeah, but those were the good old days, man.
The room in the new place is humongous. Like I couldn't believe how large it was.
Yeah. We were doing. I mean, we did the. We've done a couple Scar and Toph shows from there. We did the fucking Mango's birthday bash from there. Want to do something like that again when COVID's over, man.
Yeah.
I
started started going to the game room to like play friendlies, at lunchtime. And
Yeah.
It's like before COVID. It was like, the start of this year. The start of this year, I don't know, Genesis happened, and I was like, oh my god, I got to start playing again. This game's too good.
Yeah.
We were supposed to do this show months and months ago.
Yes.
And I was supposed to go up to NorCal, and we were shooting some videos. Dude, I was at the airport. If you guys have ever been to LAX, which I'm so sorry if you have, when you go there, right, you have to take like the bus to like this small terminal if you're flying like in a close flight, right? So NorCal is a close flight. So I was on the bus to like the little mini terminal where they dump you and then they kick you in the shins and they send you on your way. And like on the bus, Seg is like, hey, have you left yet? And I'm like, no, like I haven't gone any. And he like calls me and is like, go home. And I was like, what are you? And he's like, just go home. Like, because we were supposed to go up to shoot some stuff with Sony, and they were like, no one's allowed in your offices if you've been in Japan in the last 8 weeks or something. And like, Evo Japan had just happened. So everybody had just been in Japan. And so we were all like, well, I guess I'm going home. So I just took an Uber home. That was the end.
That sucks.
Yeah. It was really bad. That was my last trip. While I was there, I was thinking to myself, this will be the last one. Because after this, COVID will... Yeah, it'll stop everything.
And then it ended up not even happening. Yeah.
Nope.
That's a shame. Well, I mean, if they end up doing it and you come up, we should definitely hang out. We can do one of these live.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where people, you know how it is. People come to my stream, they're like, you got to go on the Scar and Toph show. I love you guys. And I'm like, sure, if I'm ever around, like, sounds great. And like, people are like, fly up right now. I'm like, okay.
yeah, okay. Just do it. It's. I was thinking about this, and I was talking to both of you guys about this. This is kind of a segue into just like kind of traditional fight, like 2D fighters in general, right? So this is something that. So SAJAM, I've been playing a lot of Grand Blue. A lot of Grand Blue Versus, and this is a game that's obviously like compared to Melee, it's a slower game, right? It's more footsies oriented. Sure. You're not air dashing around like an anime game and all this. And Bobby, I wanted to ask you because you had a Street Fighter 4 era where I think that really changed your kind of outlook on the game and stuff. And I've been playing Melee lately, and when I play, I notice I'm looking for like completely different things, and I'm paying a lot more attention to like certain aspects of the game because I'm kind of like my brain is tuned in this like slower kind of 2D fighter world right now. And we had this chat, SAJAM. This is what actually led to me kind of reaching out because me and Bobby will just talk. We have like a Slack, and we'll just talk about whatever, right? And so we were talking about. I was telling Bobby about how I've been thinking a lot about like the concept of like attention in fighting games and where someone's attention is. And I actually watched this clip this morning. I was High Fight's Twitter. And High Five posted a clip, I think it was Fujimura and Problem X, and it was like, they were both at like the health range where they could kill off one confirm. So, Fujimura's sitting at that range, he's looking for a kunai confirm, right? And then Problem X is looking for like crouching medium punching with super or whatever. And then Fujimura's like getting low on kunais or whatever, and he's like, okay, well he's only looking for the kunai, so I'm gonna dash in real quick, and he's not gonna see it coming. And then he dashes in, and he's ready for it. He crouching medium punches him and confirms and kills him. But it's like that's the whole thing of like that kind of whole thing of like, okay, I'm gonna jump here because he's not looking at the air, or I'm gonna dash in here because he is looking at the air, and that whole thing, like they're scouting this particular option, they're not gonna be able to react. I never really thought about that with Melee, and I'm not even really. I mean, I have, I guess, but not to the same degree. Not
explicitly, right?
Not explicitly, yeah. I mean, I almost wonder if maybe it's just that it's a different framework or. But now when I'm playing, I'll be playing these Marths online, and I'm like, and they're dash dancing, whatever, right? And I'm like, he's looking for a grab. So I'm like, okay, I got to do anything that doesn't give him a grab. But if I do that, if I go for any of those options, they're much less likely to see it coming because I can tell just from the way he's moving, I can tell what he's looking for.
Right.
Have you had this jump? Because like I don't really say, I actually don't really know your background as like a player. Like, have you had this where you play game? I mean, we talked about in the context of commentary where you go from one game to another, and there's kind of different ways to commentate based on the speed of the game and what you can pay attention to and stuff. Have you ever had this as a player where you jump to a different kind of like speed of game or style of game, and it kind of just changes your outlook or your framework on how you think about interactions?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so a lot of the commentary that I've done, a lot of people think about me for the Street Fighter commentary that I've done, but the last two Evos I've done is Dragon Ball, which is, versus game. It's like Marvel style. It's super fast.
Air dashing,
Yeah, it's like incredibly quick, right? And the same thing is like, I used to be a huge Marvel fan, so I loved Street Fighter 4 and also Marvel 3. And then after that, I played Injustice, which is like one of the slowest fighting games ever.
Right.
Like slow and Grambly, it's so slow, right? And I love that game. I love playing slow in any game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I played Killer Instinct after, which is incredibly fast. Like so I played a lot of different kinds of speeds of games. And I've talked about what you're talking about a lot on stream, which is people talk about, looking for lots of different options. Something they say in Street Fighter a lot is it's like so hard to watch to check the dash and anti-air the jump, right? Like it's so hard to look for ground movement and also the air movement. You're fighting Street Fighter 4 Makoto. Can you stuff her dash and also stop jump, like, you know, axe kick or jump fierce or whatever, right? It's like, it's really difficult. Or she's buffering crouching medium punch. You know what I mean? Like all these options you're thinking about. And so we talk about it a lot. And the way I always talk about it is the mental stack, right? How much your brain can look for at the same time while handling stuff. And there was a really great video recently on Corey Gaming called Playing Fast and Slow. I don't know if either of you or both of you saw it. It's great. He talks a lot about trying to, like, how you have your flow chart.
I just have to interrupt. Say, Toph and I have been talking about YouTube's algorithm. Like, you'll watch one thing and it's just like, oh yeah, this dude I love Corey Gaming. It did not show me that. I'm really upset with
dude.
I feel like its recency bias is so stupid.
It's so stupid.
Watch one video and it's like, oh, all you want is Attack on Titan videos.
Yeah, no, say that, dude. I was talking about it last time. It's so bad. Okay, so like, I'll be hungry. Well, let's say I'll be hungry one day, right? I'm gonna watch I don't know, man. I like watching food videos on YouTube sometimes. I'll pull up like one steak video, like how to cook a steak. I'll watch this steak video, right? It's like 10 minutes long.
Do you even cook a steak after, or do you just watch?
No, I just watch it and then I order something on Uber Eats or whatever. So anyway, that's not important. So I'll watch, you know, like one steak video, and then my whole fucking YouTube timeline for the next couple days is just steak videos. And then when they get over those, they start sending me the hamburger videos. So I'm just like, dude, okay, look. I just wanted to watch one steak video that one time. You don't have to stop recommending. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm a big fan of Corey Gaming. I also have not seen this video, but I'll probably go watch it after this. Corey's great. It's really good.
I'm gonna watch it after.
Yeah. His most recent video is literally this topic. It's fast versus slow.
That's tight.
Yeah, one of the things he talks about, which I'm sure you guys know about and you've heard about, is, you know, how people talk about their flowchart in pools. They're like, yeah, when I'm in pools, you know, I got this flowchart to just beat weaker players and stuff. And he discusses how there's system 1 and system 2, right? And system 1 is like your flowchart to handle stuff and how you beat stuff. Yeah, that's the exact. That's the book he talks about.
He talks about that book.
That's the book he talks about. He says. In the video, he says this video is inspired by Thinking Fast and Slow, the book. So he shows it. Yeah, it's the same idea, right? So he talks about like system 1 and system 2 stuff. And in relation to fighting games, it's so true, right? Because you only have so much of your brain that you can actively, he's dash dancing, so he must be trying to get a throw. Or this guy's doing this, so he must be looking for that, right? Only so much of your brain can sort of handle that at the same time, while also looking for your opponent's options, trying to react to different things, executing your game plan, focusing on your spacing. There's only so many things you can do at once, right? So yeah, there is sort of in every game, right? Whether the game is fast or slow, there are things that you can do preemptively that to stop, you know, your opponent coming at you. There's things you can do that are like, if you know your opponent's going to dash at you, whiffing a jab is like a super safe way to check a dash. But also, if they jump, you can still anti-air on time, right? Like there's ways to like sort of mitigate the in between of like, my brain needs to focus on this, so how do I stop this? But when it comes to like getting yourself used to that, you have to train yourself on what is so natural to you that it becomes the back of your mind and you don't need to think to operate it, and when your brain needs to say, I need to look for this specific thing. So like a game like Dragon Ball, for instance, people get stuck in these long block strings, 30 seconds of you just blocking and defending, and a lot of that is not even a lot of heavy thinking. It's literally just blocking with a specific timing that you've drilled into your mind over and over, and like just really used to like, okay, he did this. Oh, he staggered. My brain resets, and I like look at this at the beginning, right? And like it's sort of the same thing over and over. But yeah, when it comes to turning the brain on and off, and whether you're consuming a lot of mental energy, I'm sure you guys have played enough of Melee to know, like when you hit the brink where you're like, there's certain things I just can't look for or stop or deal with anymore, and my brain fried. So I either need to take a break or I'm just gonna die to the same thing over and over.
Yeah, that's actually true. That's actually true. I mean, I
kind of feel like in Melee, at least for me, like what ended up screwing, or what I could not get over was like the safe options, like when they become so predictable that they're not safe anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And then you end up in like this kind of meta rock, paper, scissors, which is really hard for me and like my mind or whatever, me as a player to deal with. Like for some players, you keep, you know, jab checking an X situation because they're going to run in.
Yeah.
But like the better players will literally just punish the jab because they're hard reading it.
Yeah.
That's tough. Like Melee, I think, but I think it's probably true in other fighting games too. If you hard read something, like you can punish it. Like if you're at that skill level, even if it's very safe.
That's true.
Yeah. Which is something to think about, like when the safest option is the bad option. You know, when you play players that are that good, it becomes like, so what are you even supposed to do at that point? I'm sure you guys have played a player where even the correct option feels like the worst option in the world, and you're like, dude, you start to even forget what options you have. You're like, okay, I have to do this or this, right? I only have 2 options left. Have you ever played someone who makes you feel like you have 2 options to do in the entire game and both are wrong?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
How do they do that? These motherfuckers are cheaters, right? Like, there's no, like, I'm like, this dude is too. I can do anything in the world, right? I have all the options in the world available to me on this controller, but he makes me feel like I have 2 and they're both wrong.
And they're both wrong. Yeah, I've definitely had that. I've had it in different ways. I had it really hard with Mango.
You know, I started thinking about this a lot, especially like Falco Laser is probably the best example. Like, I feel like when I'm playing well, I realize that, you know, sometimes you just can't. Like, you try to beat something, but like, right? That's like the trap. Like, as soon as you see the thing, and it's like, okay, my job's to beat that. It's like I've already forgotten that Melee is a game where you knock them off the stage, you kill them. That's how you win. I don't have to beat Laser to kill. You know what I mean? So like, I've been working on that. We talked about being grounded like way back. I'm thinking that if I could do that a little bit better, if I could remember that I don't have to beat any options in specific. I just have to, like, you know,
knock the dude off the stage.
Yeah. I need to take 4 stocks. However I do it, I don't really care, and I could just dance around this one thing. You know, I could just avoid it, or you know.
Yeah,
whatever.
that's actually really true.
I don't have to beat Laser
in Smash in particular.
A lot of my career, I tried to beat options that were hard to beat.
Me too, actually. Yeah, no, I realized in Smash, there's actually, because like you have the platform, so like you can circumvent. Like when I used to watch, I remember the first time. Actually, that's good. This is a good example, Bobby, because you just mentioned the Laser. I remember the first time I ever saw Zoo lose to a Falcon. Remember, Zoo never lost to a Falcon. He back in up until like 2011, he never lost to a Falcon, and it was the top 8 we first commentated, actually, NCR 2012 top 8, and Johnny beat Zoo for the first time. So this would have been 8 years ago, and I remember when I was watching it, I was like, damn. All Johnny's doing is Zoo would set up, you know, and he'd take control neutral, and Zoo would start shooting lasers, right? And he'd start walling him on the back, and Johnny would just go up to the platform, and he would just jump out of the platform for like 20 seconds. And like, he just wouldn't really fight him, and he'd like just look for like some alternate way in. It would take him a really long time to find it, but he just didn't deal with it at all. And it took quite a while. Like the neutral really got dragged out. And he just got, and then he found little openings where he'd come off the platform and he'd use like, you know, Falcon like has a really good momentum in the air, so he'd like run off the platform and kind of come in at an angle. And I was like, oh, he just kind of circumvented it, because my whole brain going in that says like Zoo's gonna win, he's gonna shut him down with the lasers, Johnny's not gonna have a way around it, and he just didn't deal with it at all. I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's exactly what you said. Where it's like the truth of the matter is you have the whole infinite space of like But for some reason, sometimes when we play, like
you're like Laser bad,
right?
Laser bad guy.
Like get locked down by the laser and lose. That's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, you played like a platformer. You're like, okay, I can deal with this laser. I just got to get in and jump over the laser. Like, yeah, why? Right? Like, why?
Do it like either up or down.
Yeah, if I crouch under the it's one of those things where like, especially, have you ever played against someone or watched someone play and you're like, the way this guy is playing is so weird. I don't understand why is he doing this? Why? And it's like working, and you're almost frustrated that it's working. Yeah, and you don't allow yourself to take yourself out and be like, why is this? This seems like a smart idea now that I actually think about it. It's like the it's like, you know, when you're plus or you have advantage and your opponent swings.
Right.
I could have just done this and beat it, and they're like, yeah, but you didn't. And you're like, yeah. At the end of the day, I got hit, so you're correct, yeah.
The worst feeling is then the situation comes up again, you're so sure, well, this guy's going to fucking mash again, he doesn't mash. You're like, well, come on.
Yeah.
I was looking for it that time.
You're like, you're supposed to do the option that lets me win. And if you don't,
it's such a bad feeling. Yeah.
I think some people don't get distracted by the math.
Yeah.
Some people don't get distracted by math.
To say, right? But it's like, it's kind of,
Who was it that first said frame data is a social construct?
Probably Mango. I don't know. Well, he wouldn't call it a social construct, though.
But you know,
he would say frame data's for wieners, dude. Let's play Valorant. Like,
exactly.
But you know that I used to be a player that was extremely textbook, right? I'm like an analytical commentator. I'm an analytical guy. So in every situation, I was like, this is the correct option for this. And I realized eventually that playing so by the books is just god awful, right? As everybody who plays by the books will eventually realize, or you just don't, and you always lose to players who don't play by the books.
Right.
But I realized that sometimes you just got to play a little loose, and by rotating options and being unpredictable in those situations, you lend yourself to the situations where you do choose to play by the book, right? Like there's people who say stuff like, for every 3 correct decisions you make, you should make like 1 bad decision, like quote unquote bad decision, or something like that. It's a good way to like test yourself. I'm sure you guys have played against those players who like every time you play them, they always do the right, like it says like, oh, when he's off stage, you should always just do this, and they just do the correct choice every time, and you just do something weird. And as soon as you hit them with something weird, you know their brain will never recover. Like they're so focused on what you did wrong that worked that they'll never win the rest of the match, right? They'll always make mistakes and you just destroy them for it. Like there's always those players. And yeah, understanding that is all part of the same kind of idea where sometimes you'll run into a player where like their mental stack is really strong, and you know that you just have to break it one time, right? They're so good at stopping they know all the answers to everything, but if you can stop it one time, you can get them thinking about what didn't work. You know that you have a chance at that.
Yeah. I was just talking about this, and then going back to the thing with like Mango and frame data, it's funny. I was talking about this yesterday. My camera just got really fuzzy. I thought so. There was this really cool thing that I saw. This was Squid. And Squid's a Falco player who's very technical, very textbook, I guess, in that sense. He's kind of like a lab monster. And he was showcasing this thing that Mango does where, Melee is very like analog, right? Like you can do your aerials, like when you jump at somebody, you can do you can do your move at various like places on them, based on the height, and then you're going to get different resulting frame data. So Mango is very good at doing this particular. He'll downer somebody's shield, right? And he does it so that the downer is exactly, and apparently he does this all the time. Squid found a bunch of examples of Mango doing this very specific, precise downer, where the downer ends up being -6. And in Melee, some characters like Zelda have really shitty grabs, but most characters, the good characters, all have 7-frame shield grabs, which is like the standard punish. Someone attacks your shield. If they're -7 or worse, you can grab them and then you can fuck them up. So Mango is found, for some reason, Mango was able to intuit, through his magical brain, that there is this specific height and the specific kind of fastfall he does where he gets a -6 down air. So it looks like you can punish with shield grab, and they always go for it. It's one frame away, and then Mango shines them and they get fucked up. And it's like the perfect height because it looks like it should be unsafe. It looks so unsafe, but it's just barely not. And somehow, he's like the only person who really is doing it. He's the only person like found that kind of intuited that he could. And it's like, Mango doesn't really like know frame data, but he also figured out this like very frame data thing that, just kind of through feel. And even if he can't really explain to you why it's working, he probably can tell you that, well, when I do it at this particular height, I seem to bait out a lot more hits than I would otherwise, from, just based on if I do it lower, they're going to respect it and they're going to keep shielding or whatever.
That's so funny to me because there's a talk about old fighting games recently and like how they didn't know frame data and you don't need to know frame data to play old games and stuff. There was a conversation about this, but I think people don't realize often that if you block an attack, and you don't know what it is on block, but I can do a move after, that's frame data. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, the minute details of frame data might matter more or less to somebody. But if you know, like, hey, when I do this attack, I get to move first after. Or, hey, when he does this, I can up smash, and he can't do anything after. He just dies. That is knowledge of frame data, right? So, yeah, it is funny how you think about that, and like Mango's just like, dude, I do this and I can do stuff after. It's rad. Like
it works.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of his feeling, but at the same time, he there is an understanding there of the game, right? That it's maybe not as like mathematical as someone who's like, oh, I did this. I looked at the frames and it turns out it's -6. But at the same time, it is important to know that kind of stuff, right? And like frame data doesn't tell the whole story almost ever. Like the distance, the options your opponents have after, like what you can do to stop them trying to press or not press. Or there's so many situations where it comes up, and I think a lot of new players especially really struggle with, kids love frame data and they love tech, right? You try to explain to them the frame data is not the full story, right? You have to really think about the context of what both characters and players can do after and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's exactly the funny thing with the Mango instance that I bring up is that because you can do that downer so that it's less minus. You can do it, you can do it lower and cleaner and make it better. You can make it better frame data, right? You can make it so it's only -2 or something. And, they can't do hardly anything. But
at -2, they're not going to try to shield grab you every time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If it's -6, it's like,
maybe I got to punish here. Like, what? It seems like I can do something, and then boom, you get blown up. So I think it's really funny. Because
and then you schmoovin', I get it. It's,
and then
you know
you're
how it
schmoovin'.
works. Yeah.
It's it's funny because the people who can explain it are not necessarily always the people that can, like the mathy people might not ever, they might not come up with it. They can explain it in post after someone else kind of brings that option to the table. And I don't know, I just think that that's like one of the things that is really funny where with Mango in particular, and you're talking about like looking for, sometimes you feel like you only have two options. Sometimes it takes that kind of player who's doing something that's like a little bad, but it's actually like, kind of fucking genius in a way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that's kind of how these metagames develop, where you got like these new options that are like sort of resultant.
Yeah, this one's a Trojan horse for sure.
This one's a Trojan horse.
It is.
But it's good because that's actually hard, right? I mean, having the precise -6 down air.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Because if you do it one frame worse, then it's -7, and now you're getting grabbed.
Yeah.
So.
I did
up something really good as something that looks bad.
Right.
Yeah. It's sleight of hand, dude. Like, it's all there is to it, right? It's just it's a magic trick. You just show them the coin, right? And you're just like, oh, you can take it. And it's the little things like that are very important. I did like a video on my channel where I was like, there was a guy that came into my Discord and was like, hey, I see this move for this character's -7, right? There's Percival standing medium, so Toph is aware. It's just like this little poke. He does a little thrust. He's like, hey, this is -7. What am I supposed to do with this move? It's useless, right? And I was like, all right, let me show you. So I just showed like this corner series where if you do like a spaced out version of this move, depending on what you cancel into after and depending on what your opponent does, you can run really messed up offense off of a move that is like unsafe up close, right? Like if you cancel into a fireball and your opponent mashes the button to punish it, you get a trade and he gets a big combo. Or if you like cancel into like his like command dash into a low, like you get all these options. So trying to explain that, like, look, it says it's -7, but in the context of a match, like that means so much. If you do it max range, your opponent can't punish it. So like I was like, hey, something that people do a lot, this is at like a very high level thing that people do all the time, is they do like a move that's spaced out, right? So they'll do like standing medium punch really far away, and then afterwards they just do like another button buffered into super. And if you try to mash on it because it's negative, you just die, right? And it's the same idea behind like the -6 down air, where like, yeah, it's -7. You can hit something. It's your turn. It's your turn. Hit a button. But in actuality, it's not your turn. And you just got destroyed. And you're like, but I know the frame data. It's -7. I should be able to hit a button. But dude, it's not the whole story. You know what I mean? Like, it's so important to understand that if you get frustrated by something like that, it's because you don't, you're not thinking abstractly about the game and you're only thinking mechanically. And mechanics are great. I love the mechanics of games and why stuff happens. But also, it's a little bit more nebulous than people think.
Yeah. That's funny.
About this, I've been talking about it. You know that book, Master and His Emissary? It's also about like the brain and stuff. And
wait, describe the book. Describe the book for SAJAM.
Could you describe it? I guess I could.
You should describe it. I'm gonna fuck it up because I haven't read it. I haven't read it. I've only. I would have to filter it through your lens.
Right hemisphere stuff. Like there's a lot of pop science is BS about it. Like it's not actually real. Oh, left's creative, the right's whatever.
Right's mechanically sure. Yeah.
By camera. Yeah.
One dude who like was obsessed with the question of like why is the brain divided into two hemispheres, and even knowing that field was like totally discredited, he still studied there anyway, which I think is dope, right? Because we play Melee not for the money, but because we actually care. So now I trust this guy already because he's going into a field where there's no money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wrote this book. It's like his findings from like, a career's worth of work. And kind of his thesis or his hypothesis is that the right hemisphere kind of basically both hemispheres are involved in everything all the time. And they just see the world differently. It's like a how. It's like we have two different ways of seeing the world. One is where everything that's happening is present. You know what I mean? It's like the holistic kind of, that's what he believes like the right brain kind of does. The left hemisphere is, it kind of constructs the whole from parts, right? It sees like little pieces I built this for my kid. It's like,
I was going to ask.
It sees it as these separate parts put together. It's very much more mechanical and, analytical and stuff. And frame data is very much like that. One of the things that's interesting, and there's like a lot of science about if you have like a stroke on one side of your, one hemisphere, so then you can kind of observe the differences. But the left hemisphere, this kind of analytical side, it's notoriously like in denial. In other words, it believes that what it sees is all that exists, which I feel so perfectly like is shown in this kind of, if you're a frame data kind of person, it's almost like you can't even realize that there's cracks. You know what I mean? It's like, that's why like the strong mental stack and that kind of player, I feel like once you kind of question their whole worldview, it's like for whatever reason, it kind of feels like the whole thing crumbles. Like,
it is literally like the Matrix. Like it's like you start to see the rules bent a little bit, and you're like, bro, this doesn't make any sense. Why is he stopping bullets? Like you don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that sometimes it's almost like people don't want to admit that something that's negative or doesn't have good frame data like could ever be good. Sometimes it's like you don't want to accept that that's possible.
That the numbers could possibly be wrong.
I remember I was talking to I think I was talking to Jimmy, the Tekken player, Jimmy J. Tran, right? People love Jimmy. And I was talking to him. He was going to go play against some opponent, and it was like, I think it was like AK. It was somebody who's young or some young, super young player. And I remember him like telling in the middle of the match or like before the match started, I was like, what are you going to go do against this guy? Like, what's your strat here, right? Because you guys know you talk to players about what they're going to do all the time. I wasn't even commentating the tournament. I was just genuinely curious because he's a fascinating guy to talk to. And I remember him saying like, like he's like super young. He is extremely talented, but his mental game is awful. So all I need to do is like hit him with one taunt jet upper, and I know he'll crumble. Like I don't even remember who it was about, right? And so he loses like the first 2 rounds of the game. Third round he gets a hit, just taunt jet upper right away, and it was over. Like it just immediately, like it just crumbled at the seams. And I remember thinking to myself, like it was such a strong recognition that like whoever he was playing against was that kind of player where. Like once they get hit by something like that, it is so incredibly demoralizing, and their reality begins to fold. You know what I mean? Like it was just the beginning of the game.
Like a what's that similar to? Are there any other moves that I would know that?
It's like I guess like like getting hit by rest by Jigglypuff, where like you hate it so much in your soul. It's like such a you get hit by it, you're like that's so stupid. Why can or like getting hit wobbled or something? It's like something so frustrating to even be hit by that you're like this. Games suck.
Wobble is a perfect example because I think I've seen that happen. Somebody could be winning the set and you just get wobbled one time and it's like,
yeah, you just like the feeling just is slipping away. You just like you come back in from that stock and instead of being like, all right, I'll play the game again, you just like panic and run at them and then you make a mistake and they punish you for it and then you get grabbed again and you're just like, oh my god, just chill, man.
Do you know what that is? Anybody know what that is? Can I stop that from happening?
So you know what? So like Killer Instinct, I've talked about how there's interactions and breaks and stuff. There's a thing in the game I call the revenge breaker. So when you get hit by something in the game, you always have the ability to break whatever combo is your opponent's doing, right? I have a theory that when you get hit by something that you think is bullshit, the first thing that you break. It's just the revenge break. You want to get back into the action, you try to break it immediately. And I don't know what to like call that in other fighting games, but it's like when you get hit by something, you mash uppercut on wake up right away because you're like, that shouldn't have hit. That's
fuck this. Yeah, let's
I
get
don't know
back
what
neutral.
to call that. There's like a feeling for it, and I always in KI I call it the revenge breaker because you want to get back in there right away. And it's the same thing in Melee. When I see someone die in Melee to something, like they get rest, whatever it is, right? I guess rest is not a good example because you come down and you just punish Jigglypuff, but like
no, rest is a good example. But go on.
You know what comes to mind actually though? That's a perfect word. Brene Brown said this. Like the technical definition of blame is like the release of negative energy, like outward at something else. It's like the release of, you know what I mean?
It's like that feeling where there's so much frustration about what just happens that you can't even like it's just ground up in there, and if you don't release it, it's just gonna poison your body. So like I guess when someone rests you and you run down and they just like they're punished as like a laser, you're like, oh god, no.
Yeah.
Dude. I see that happen all the time where like they go down and you guys are like, all right, he's gonna do up air and oh my god, what did he just do? Like they're so flustered that like they make some awful decision. I guess like what we say in fighting games is like people are mind fucked, right? It's like right, but like that's not quite the most articulate way to describe it, but maybe it's right, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, mind fucked is like you get mind fucked by other things, but dude, I totally feel you. I made a tweet one time. I said that like there's a direct correlation with space. Bobby, you'll appreciate this. SAJAM, you might as well. I mean, there's a direct correlation with Space Animal players on netplay and how toxic they are with how often they Tekken place. Because Tekken place is by far the fastest option.
You're trying to get back in there.
You're trying to get back in there.
You want to scrap.
You want to scrap, exactly. And I've always, there was this whole, I mean, it's just come up time and time again. There was this whole arc. There was this tournament I went to in Canada. This was in 2013, 2014. It was called EXP. So SFAT won. Actually, no, Mutaking won the tournament. SFAT got second. And third through 6th or 7th was all Canadians, right? And they did this cool thing where the production actually had, like, it went on match intros, it would be like SFAT, and it would show like a fox coming in versus like, Kirby Kaze, and it would show their characters, show Sheik. And they'd have a little quote. And then, the winner would have a quote after the round, like it was Street Fighter, like, like go home and be a family man, like that style.
Sure.
So they got a quote for the top 8. They actually collected a quote from all the players, and then they would show that quote on the big projector and on stream. They would show it like SFAT, was saying something, right? And SFAT's win quote was, "Hey Canadians, stop teching in place." And so SFAT was basically calling out like all the top Canadian players for fucking teching in place too much, and I mean he beat all of them. And I remember that had a really pointed impact on me, because I remember thinking like, damn, like he really just kind of like he read them so hard that he actually just outside of the game, he just called him out, and I thought it was so funny. And I always think about that, like fucking as early as the beginning of time, I feel like it's the people that tech in place the most in Melee are like they're the ones that want to go, they want to get back into the fray, and you can't always play like that. Because then you run into the wobbler, they don't let you back into the fray. You got to sit there for a minute and get wobbled.
Fighting games are so much about tempering emotions, right? Like there's so many emotions that are flying in the game, and forcing you to act on those emotions, like forcing you to be like, okay, I need to not, panic and throw this all away. There's like feelings you have all the time in games. There's that frustration of when things go wrong. You also know that feeling of dread when it's like, oh God, I might have made one mistake and died. That feeling as well is like another feeling. You have to stop yourself. Like you feel it deep in your stomach of like, oh God, am I going to throw this away? Like that kind of feeling too. Those things come up constantly in fighting games, and like managing that stuff, I feel like it takes so much toll on your body. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, oh, like it's just so much.
Yeah, you're like up, and then you like suicide a stock away, or like you're
in your brain, you're like, you're gonna lose this set. And you're like, no, I'm not gonna lose this set.
Yeah, you're like arguing with yourself. Oh, it's such a bad feeling. Oh,
like it's like you're trying to stop yourself. You're like, bro, I'm cool, bro. I can drive. Like, hold on, let me get back into the game.
Yeah.
And like, it's like you can't. Like, it's such a hard feeling to train out of your body. That instinctual, like, oh no, like, what am I gonna? I just need to chill. And then like you start to like try to slow down, and then your opponent runs at you, and you're like, no wait, I need to go fast.
You're not ready for it. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Fighting games are sick.
Yeah, they're great. They're fucking great, man. It's
such a good emotional test of your, as you as a human. It's a test of mechanics, but also as emotions for sure.
Yeah, I really oh man, it's funny how it's like the same, and it's just funny talking about Smash compared to fighting games or like 2D fighting games, where the same overall, like it's like the same high level concept, but it like manifests itself a little bit differently. Like obviously you're not like suiciding side being off the stage and like a Grand Blue Versus or whatever, but it's like you dropped around because of like you were up, like you're up a game in tournament, and you're up around, you close it out 2-0, and you like you throw a bad fireball and they super you or something, you're just like, fuck, what am I doing? And then you got to sit there and like grapple with the reality that you might lose the tournament set now, and you're just like, was that my one shot? Like, was that the only chance I had? And it's like, oh man, I've been here before.
Have you ever like told yourself in your head, the only way I lose this is by throwing a fireball and then throw a fireball?
Man. It's so, it's like that. Like there's one way I lose this, and it's like, but it might work, so let's go for it anyway. Or you get the knockdown.
Never had that thought, but it does happen.
It does happen.
It's better that the thought doesn't happen for you then, right? Because if the thought happens and then you do it, it's way worse. Like if you don't have the thought, it's like you die and you're like, oh, well, I guess that happened, right? But if you have the thought, like all I have to do is not get jumped in, and you just like see them in the air, it's like, oh no, I'm dead. Like it's such a bad feeling.
Sometimes it's almost worse in Smash, because it'll be like, okay, you'll be like, it's like you're fighting Samus is a good example, and you're like, okay, you're boxing him out in neutral and all this stuff. You hit him off stage. Samus is that very long recovery where they use their bombs and they get back to the stage, and you're just like, okay, the only way I lose this is if I go to the ledge and I try to do some cheeky edge guard that should work, but I got to do it super perfect. And if I fuck it up, they're gonna kill me, and I'm gonna be off stage. They're gonna come on the stage. They're gonna down smash me. And you're like, the only way I lose this is if I go over there, because I'm in zero. Like they can't do anything to me. All I got to do is play neutral like 2 or 3 more times, and then you're like, that they're recovering, and 5 seconds pass, 10 seconds pass. You're like, yeah, but maybe I'll go over there. I'll just see what happens. Or I'll just kick him one time, get a little more damage. That's what I should be doing anyway. I should take advantage of the situation. You go over there, they come up on the stage, they down smash you, and you're just like, fuck, what the hell am I doing? I just had this whole dialogue with myself, and you got to sit there and you got to just, sleep in the bed you made. I hate it.
It's hard, man. One of the hardest things in fighting games in general is doing nothing. Doing nothing is so hard, right?
Doing nothing is so hard. There was a Japanese player that actually said, it might have been Tokido. It's one of them. There's this there's this Twitter. It's like famous quotes by fighting game players. It's like in Japanese, and one of them was like, "You got to train." It's like learning how to play fighting games is learning how to be okay with nothing happening. And the player that's more okay with nothing happening will usually win. And I was like, damn. And I made a mental note to myself, I got to be okay with nothing happening. And then I feel like I didn't work on that at all.
It's hard, dude.
Hard to work on, yeah. Hard to intentionally work on things. That's like really what I'm kind of noticing, because there's so much, and you can get distracted by like there's so many things that are interesting that you kind of want, that I want to play around with. But
it's like the laser thing. It's like I don't have to beat these lasers, but maybe but that's a skill you can improve on it. And the reality is you could get you could say to yourself, maybe I don't have to beat these things, but you could also, a slightly different player might find a very good way to deal with them. And, like Zane's power shooting the laser every time, and he's, cutting Falco's up for trying to go for the laser in the first place. So it's like, you watch different top players, and, there's some top players in every game that are not okay with nothing happening at all, but they're still seeing success because they just got so good at forcing their hand. And they never really developed that skill, but they never really needed to. I mean, that totally exists. I don't think Mango's very good at kind of letting nothing happen, but
yeah,
it's okay. It seems to be working out for him.
Every game has somebody like that who's like a button barbarian. They just can't help themselves. No matter what's going on, they got to be doing something. Like there's always players like that for sure. And when you watch a player like that, it almost justifies to you. You're like,
yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anyone that comes to mind for like Street Fighter? I feel like it's harder with the slower game.
It can be harder with a slower game, but like Nemo.
Okay, yeah.
Nemo has never sat still a day in his life. Like that guy watching it, what I describe Nemo as is Nemo plays like every other person in the human race is inferior. And like he is such a model, competitor compared to everybody. Like nobody else is worthy of his time. So he plays like the game he plays is bad. And the players he's playing are worse. Like, that's the way he plays. Whatever the worst, most despicable way you could play the game is, he plays it in that way.
I love.
He plays like he hates your guts. Like, he cannot stand you as a person. Like, he thinks he's so much better than you.
I love
players like so bad. Why would you even think you could compete in the same game as me? Is like his play style. And he's wearing like a nice suit and he's all buttoned up and stuff. And then he plays like a despicable human being.
Oh man, the only arc where I really watched a lot of Nemo was I watched a lot of him when he was in like his Marvel 3 arc where he came to the US and he beat Champ and Christie in those money matches, and I was watching a lot of him in Marvel and I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. I haven't really watched much of him in Street Fighter. Maybe I should.
Oh, man, you should watch his Relento and tell me it doesn't give you.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen this. Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about his
hitting triple punch and throwing knives the entire like it's like the most. It's absurd. He never doesn't do anything. Like there's no time in the match where he ever doesn't attack. Like it's like his if you ever heard like the Scrub quote of like it's a fighting game, not a blocking game. I think he's like the ultimate example of that, where it's like I didn't buy this game to not hit attacks. I bought a joystick. Every second it's not being operated is money wasted.
It's true, yeah.
Like he's like, I got to do something. If this lever is not moving, if these buttons aren't being pressed, it's like time is going by. You know what I mean?
Something's wrong. What was it? Relento was? I mean, I never really played Street Fighter 4 like the two of you guys, but Relento looked like a problem.
Relento players are bad people for sure. Like there's no doubt.
That's tight.
I just remember. Is it Valmaster? It was like one moment where I feel like he just read something Nemo was going to do, and he actually did like level 1 focus counter hit to crumple. I thought it was so sick. Because like you don't do that much. I just didn't see that much.
Valmaster is a sick player to watch too. He was so good, and then he became an Overwatch player.
He did.
Yeah, he like stopped playing. He stopped playing 5 and was like, "I'm playing Overwatch," and I was like, "All right."
Wow, that is random as hell.
You follow your dreams, man. You do what you gotta do, I guess.
I remember when they came out with the character roster for that game, I was like, oh shit, this is like a fighting game character roster. This is wild.
Characters are cool.
Yeah, they should make a fighting game spinoff. That's crazy, man.
People always ask me stuff like that, actually. It just reminded me. People always ask me if I would ever commentate anything that's not Street Fighter or fighting games or anything. Have you guys ever thought about that?
I commentated Mario Kart with Mike Ross one time.
That sounds like it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
But like it's I mean, but like seriously, I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like Well, it's like you're almost asking the wrong question at that point, right? I feel like it's not would you commentate something that wasn't fighting games. I feel like the question is because like if I was really into something, I would commentate it. So I think the question is really would I get that into something? Would I be good enough at something to trust myself to commentate it?
That's the right answer, by the way. I think.
Right? Like I'm sitting here. I have to imagine. Say, Bobby, you were getting into StarCraft at one point, right? I mean, I have to imagine if you got good enough at it.
If I got good enough at it, yeah.
Yeah, you just do it. I mean, I feel like it's yeah. That's kind of the funny thing is I feel like there's this for some reason there's this something I observe with like, people in the FGC, I think sometimes they talk about like melee players kind of only really play melee. Like there's not that much carryover between melee and like, other fighting games and stuff. I guess Leffen kind of being the notable counterexample, but it is funny because I feel like there's a lot of carryover between melee and like other esport titles. You got like Mango who's really into like Valorant and used to play League of Legends and stuff like that. Actually, a lot of melee guys like used to be into League of Legends and stuff. I think Blur's commentated Hearthstone, So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I totally would. But I'd have to know it, I'd have to know the game so well. The way I know Smash and the way I know the fighting games that I play at least.
Yeah, my answer is always I'll commentate whatever games I love. If there's something that I really, really love, whatever I'm the most interested in, I would say yes to. And even if a fighting game comes out and there's like $1 million circuit and they're like, hey, you want to come like commentate this game? If like the game's dog shit, I'm like, nah, I'm cool, man. Like I've turned down, I'm sure you guys are the same way. People always ask me about doing other stuff and I've been asked to do other esports stuff. And like, I look at the game and I'm just like, I could never do something I don't want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've been playing Runeterra? Is it Runeterra you've been playing?
Yeah, the League card. I love card games. I think card games they're one of my favorite genres. So yeah, I play a lot of Runeterra. Like when I'm not playing fighting games, I play them a lot. And I think I was using some like of old Magic articles and stuff to discuss like
I saw that stream. I watched that stream. Yeah, with the Jimmy and the fucking the Spike.
Yeah, Johnny Timmy Spike.
Johnny Timmy Spike.
Johnny Timmy Spike. Yeah, Johnny Timmy Spike is like such a classic article about describing playstyles and like what you find fascinating. So in fighting games, all our content creators are terrible, right? So when you like want to like look for really like fun analytical pieces or descriptions like that of like really fun playstyles and different things, you have to look adjacent, right?
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, for that reason, I love looking at, content created in other fields to like use as an example of like what is great, right? And that article is just hilarious. Like it's just such a funny description of like, Timmy just wants to like buy cards that blow shit up and he wants to have he doesn't care if he wins. He just wants to like big man smash. You know what I mean? Like he just wants to feel good about playing. And like that there's so many people that feel that way, So I think coming up with descriptions like that is always fun.
Yeah, all the Ganondorf players.
Yeah.
All the Ganondorf players. Yeah.
Who cares if you win? You just got like that one sick clip or like that one sick moment where you're like, I'm the best player in the world.
Yeah. That actually, it's funny because I've never really thought about that, like necessarily looking at adjacent kind of communities and like, kind of adapting the their articles or whatever into sort of like a fighting game or a Smash kind of. There's this Magic the Gathering article, my favorite. I think I've linked you it, Bobby, but the article about the Bruce. Yeah. We were actually talking about this earlier. It's that voice that you're about to lose, and it's like your losing urge. I don't know. Have you read that? Do you know the article I'm talking about, SAJAM? Have you read it? It's a very old. It's like from the early 2000s. There's
a few really classic Magic articles that are really good like that. There's another one that I was going to show on my stream. I don't remember what it was about. I've shown like 2 or 3, and that is one of them that I want to show on there. But there's so many good classic because it's a game that's been around for so long.
Magic
and evokes a lot of the same kind of feelings that we have right in card games, which is like so satisfying to me. And so yeah, there's a lot of those articles that I've thought about bringing up on stream because I don't know about you guys. I think like most of the articles written about fighting games are like, this tournament's happening, check this out. And it's I already know the tournament's happening. I don't need to read this article. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wonder why that is. But I mean, I've thought about that a lot. Like I kind of feel like at Twitch, one of the things I've been thinking, well, not even just at Twitch, but just in general, like, why don't we have better content?
Yeah.
I have a sense that there is good content, but you can't find it, I mean, I wonder if that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not being produced. But
there's Core A.
Yeah.
And YouTube's too busy recommending me fucking steak videos. So there you go.
Maybe it's just that, like, back in the day there were forums, so you could just, if you had a thought, you write it, and that's it. Then it's content, and
yeah.
Yeah.
But now, do you have to make a video? You know, does it have to be like animated? I don't know.
You got to make a nice thumbnail, all this stuff.
I don't know, but I feel like it's possible. I just don't know how to.
Yeah.
It seems like it, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I talk to people a lot about that kind of stuff, and I think most people I know who create stuff, I'm sure you guys are similar. Like, most of the people I know, why they create stuff is because they wanted something to exist and no one else was doing it.
For sure.
So they're like, I guess I got to do it. I feel that way about a lot of fighting game content, and this year especially, I've been talking this like last 8 months. I've been like, guys, why does all this cool stuff not? Why do I have to go read Magic the Gathering articles to describe player profiles? Because there's not like a version for fighting games or whatever, right? The closest was like a Corey gaming video about hard body mind or whatever, the laugh theory. Yeah. That's like it.
Yeah, I remember that one. Why was it called the laugh theory, by the way?
It was because Laugh is the guy who made the theory.
Oh, okay.
I wonder if like you know, the people who have something they want to say, like now they do it in a specific way, like for example streaming or, you know, YouTube, and that just doesn't get shared as much or whatever. I just feel like there's no archive, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how do these things become like so well known? It's kind of like you can find them, and
yeah,
and then like the link never changes. I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like maybe we're losing that. This is all I blame tech for all this, by the way. Because they just want more clicks. You know what I mean? They don't want big godlike articles. They want like a lot of things that keep you looking for more. If you find this sick as shit, then you know you don't have to look for more.
Yeah. It's why I think for me I would want to read something like that, but maybe not everybody does. What's funny is I wonder if like me reading the article on stream is more interesting to most people than sitting down and reading the article themselves. You know what I mean? Like
that's another thing. Yeah, maybe that's a lost art too. We used to read the forums. Like
yeah,
you would just sit there and you were reading words for fun.
You know who's fighting game written content I'm actually really into is Patrick Miller, Pat the Flip, works for Riot. I think he's actually really good. He writes the kind of articles that we're talking about.
Yeah,
like he
has a day job.
He has a day job. He does have a day job. He doesn't
work.
So he doesn't. But I mean, he puts them out. You know, I'd say how often does he put an article? It's every 2-3 weeks, something like that. Maybe every month.
Right.
Yeah, and they're all good. I really liked his article on. It really rang true to me as a Melee player. He did an article on like, you know, the meme is, you know, like simple fighting game is better for a newcomer to the genre because it's easier to pick up. And his argument was basically like, in fact, often it's easier to get into a complex fighting game because there's so many more things to get good at that you get your reward, your reward center or whatever in your brain gets triggered a lot more often. And I kind of had this experience when I was trying to get into Smash Ultimate, which is a much simpler game. I very quickly hit the plateau of like, you know, the combos I could do or like my execution or whatever. And then I was like, damn, how do I really get better from here? And it very quickly turned into this sort of abstract thing. Whereas in Melee, I remember when I was getting good, there was always like, clean up your wave dashes, you can get better at short hop lasers, you know, you can learn this new technique and it feels really cool and flashy and you want to use that in matches. You know, you learn this new combo and you get excited to want to use it and you're like, oh shit, there's all this cool stuff I could be working all the time. Then before you know it, you've been playing the game for 2 years and you're pretty good. And he was basically making this argument with Guilty Gear, and I was like, this is good stuff. I've never seen anyone really verbalize this. Yeah. I wish there was more. I wish there was more stuff like that. I would totally read it. Maybe. Yeah, I mean this brings me back. I was telling you, Sid, I really like your stream. I feel like you're kind of doing this where you have these like it's like a chunked thought, and you do like a hour-long stream on it, and then you can cut it up and put it on YouTube, and people will watch it.
Yeah, I mean. I think it's because like that stuff doesn't exist, right? There's not as much like abstract thought about how to learn fighting games, how to get into fighting it. Like that kind of stuff is so rare. And I was asking for it for so long that I decided, much like commentary, much like everything, I was like, dude, this doesn't exist. No one's doing it. I should just do it. So, you know, putting in the effort to like find stuff to talk about, right? And then you kind of like practice, like, what are the things I'm going to say about this, right? What are the things that are going to come up? What's the chat most likely to ask me? You know, like, what are the things that are going to come up? Thinking about that a lot. And then opening the stream with an hour and a half, 2 hours of just talking about different segments. And it's like, I kind of treat it like a late night show almost, sort of, is like the way I think about it is like you have segments and like you do your monologue, right? And then you have it in the beginning, you chat about it. And then you have, well, in today's news, you know, and you pull up the asset or whatever the full screen thing that you need is, you chat about the article, you go through that, you do the next thing, you do that. You know, it's the same kind of format. And for me, it works great. It's exactly what I wanted to do in a stream. And then, it all gets cut up to YouTube and the people on YouTube love it. And so, you know, for me, like it feels great for what I like to do, right? And it just takes a little bit. It takes like this much more effort than just like turning on the stream and talking, right? It's not like a grand effort to like go and think like, what am I going to talk about today, right? It's not complicated, but it helps the stream dramatically, I think. And so like that little bit of work, I mean, it's like what we talked about with Ludwig, right? Like putting in like this much extra effort into your content helps a lot. If you just turn on the stream and go, if you're like an amazing entertainer, you might be okay. But putting in that much thought about how you structure your Twitch stream will help you a lot. And I think it's probably because I started on YouTube that I think that way about how I create stuff. But yeah, what ended up happening for me, and the reason I thought about it more, is I had messed up my hands. So I couldn't play fighting games for like 3 months. And so you can imagine when streaming is like your job, you're like, how am I going to not play a video game for 3 months or whatever, right? So I'm like, so I just talked for 3 months every day.
And you got good at it.
Yeah,
that makes
so
sense.
I was just like, how am I going to structure a stream to just talk for 3 months? I was like, So every day I would talk for 3 to 4 hours a day about whatever the topic was, because I was like, otherwise I'm not streaming. And I told everybody I'm streaming Monday through Friday, so here it goes. And like, that's just the strat.
It sounds like to me though, you also kind of don't super punish yourself. Yeah, but it's come back to what we talked about really early on, when you're saying like, you know, you're kind of grounded in that you just kind of have to be yourself, and then like probably you feel like you didn't blow it, or you know, I don't know if you feel like you punished yourself or beat yourself up if something's like not up to your standard, but
yeah,
I don't know. Certainly. I feel like Toph, I feel like when I think about you, I feel like you definitely have a high bar for yourself, and you can feel like you didn't do a good enough job. You know, I know that happens to me. Like I'll beat myself up, and so I'm just thinking about that too, where it's like, man, it's so much healthier to put in that little bit of effort, but then not like, if it doesn't go, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to change your stream, make it 10 times better. And then if it doesn't, you're going to beat yourself up, because then you're not going to want to do it again.
Right.
Like, okay, this much effort wasn't enough. I got to do this much. And before you know it, you're kind of like, I don't know. It's just back to mentality.
You know, it's for me, I have like my brain is like built to learn, I think, or I've taught myself how to learn.
Yeah.
And so I used to be a coach, a wrestling coach. I taught high school wrestling because I was a wrestler. I love grappling in general. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. So I feel like what I ended up doing is very similar, but I constantly approach everything with the mindset of how to learn. And so no matter what it is, whenever there's a failure for me, it could be anything, like not getting a commentary gig, or my stream, you know, going badly because I was like not prepared for what I wanted to talk about, or I was, you know, there's something, I approached something in an incorrect way, or a commentary block was bad. My thought process is never like, there's always the immediate disappointment, but it's always like what are the things that I hit right? What can I change for next time? I'm a very like forward, you know, it's always forward movement. It's like, that didn't go quite right. What went wrong? So I remember there was like one time where something came up, and I remember I tweeted about something, or I did something, and I immediately regretted it. And I was like, man, I don't think I was correct in what I said there. The next day I came on stream, maybe the most prepared I've ever been for in my life, and like really got into the topic. And I did like an hour and 15-minute discussion where like I didn't even talk to the chat. I had so much to say that like I just did it, and I just like went, and my chat room was like, man, that was like it was like a lecture. Like you came so prepared with notes and stuff that we like, you know, I just went for that long. And so yeah, that's kind of how I am, where although there is room to beat yourself up, I think like to me, I try to constantly, you know, move towards whatever the objective is.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that though, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, you have to train yourself. It's just so easy to just get stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Past is dead. Right, all we got is now and the future.
You know what the funny thing is? I feel like I have to relearn it for every new avenue, because I remember in the early days of commentary, when I was commentating a lot with Bobby in 2012 and 2013, I would beat myself up a lot for that. And then I got over it, and I learned how to be forward thinking. And then we started doing, like, you know, Scar and Toph showing the reads. And then if we had a bad show, I would start beating myself up again for that. And then I had to learn how to not beat myself up for that. So it feels like, and now I'm streaming and I'm kind of going through the same thing. So it's like every little, like, new avenue, I have to, like, relearn it. Like, it's like you think I could just learn the lesson in one pursuit or one avenue and, like, apply it to everything. But it turns out that because it manifests a little differently or something, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm the kind of guy, I have to relearn that exact lesson of be forward thinking, don't beat yourself up too hard. I have to relearn that over and over for everything I'm doing.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've realized now, you know, it's almost like the meta level to that, which is like I shouldn't beat myself up for that. So there you go.
I did a video on my stream lately that was like, hey, there's nothing wrong with being a slow learner or learning things in a certain kind of, like, there's nothing wrong with how you learn, right? Like, so when you remember when Leffen was trying to learn Tekken?
Yeah, yes.
Leffen's the kind of learner that, like, somebody was like, hey, when you get hit in Tekken, how you tech roll doesn't really matter. Like, there's a lot of different ways to tech roll. Just hold back. It's the safest option. It'll get you out of most things. The rest of it doesn't matter, right? And Leffen was like, of course the other options matter. I need to know if, like, I roll this way, what beats this? If I roll this way, what beats that? And, like, there are some learners where you can just say, just hold back. It's the safest option. It'll get you out of, like, 95% of things. And until you get good enough to know which thing to tech roll, like, it doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. There's some people you can just say that to, and they're like, okay, cool, I'll just hold back. And then there's, like, a brain like Leffen's that's like, I need to understand exactly how this interaction works. And so I talked about it then, but it's the same thing with anybody. No matter how you learn, it's going to be different than anybody else. And you learn at different speeds and paces and stuff, right? And there's different, for some people, learning through reading or watching or hands-on is better, right? So when I teach people fighting games, or if I learn a fighting game myself, I try to learn by getting my hands on. I try to learn by watching footage. I try to learn by, reading things about the game, or learning about the game by, like, talking with people. I try to learn in a lot of different ways to show that you can learn in a lot of different ways, and there's different things to grasp in each way. So, like, the kind of videos I like making are not only just me learning, but teaching people how to teach themselves, or teaching people how to learn, right? Those are so fun to get into, because I think a lot of people have the expectation when I learn a new game, I'm picking things up super fast, right? And then they're like, I was watching you learn a game, and it was actually very frustrating because I don't learn that fast. And so when watching you, I felt like, why should I try if I don't learn this quick? Like, you're not winning every match you're playing and you learn quick. What is my hope, right? So I think that people need to understand that, you learn slow sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people who learn slow and then they peak way higher than the people who learn fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you learn quick, sometimes you hit a plateau, you're stuck. You just can't get past it.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know, I haven't heard you say that, but I also don't know how people get content nowadays, but the kind of like, there's nothing wrong with how you learn. I feel like that's a pretty powerful thing to be said, like, nowadays. I get the sense that, like, we need to train our minds much more, like, kind of.
Wait, what do you mean by train your minds?
I guess I feel like mindset gets in the way of, for me, number one, even getting hands-on. Like, I remember with StarCraft, that was my biggest problem, is I didn't want to play because I was so afraid to do the wrong thing. Because if I did,
ladder anxiety,
beat myself up, and I didn't want to beat myself up. So it's like, but all of that's just my mind getting in the way of, like, even teaching my muscle memory how to get good, which obviously is required to get good, So it's like, there's one side of it, which is the hands-on and watching, other people, so you can kind of, like, see and about, like, the mirror neurons and all that stuff. Like, when we watch other people do things, our brain's doing so much. Like, we're imagining, what we would do, and you kind of train yourself in that way. So that's all good. But I feel like, if there's one thing that I think holds myself back and a lot of people, it's, like, just the mental attitude towards learning,
Yeah.
And I think it's really powerful what you just said, about, like, nothing wrong with how you learn. It's like,
yeah, dude, it's so.
Maybe there's nothing wrong with how I learn. Maybe there's not.
That's the thing, is there's nothing wrong with it. And, like, people don't tell you that. They're like, oh, if you can't figure this out, you're not this rank in this game by X amount of time, or can't do that. It's like, dude, there's like, I was explaining to someone, like, someone in my chat was saying, like, I try to pick up, like, Dragon Ball or, like, a versus game, and the combos are so long and complex. And he's like, and I don't pick up combos that fast. I can't do these complicated combos. And I was like, dude, there's no, like, sign when you go to play online that says your combos must be this long to ride. You know what I mean? It doesn't. You can go online and do ABC, like, the simplest combo known to mankind, and it's perfectly fine. Like, what, there's no guy out there hitting you with a stick if you try to get on the ride. It's okay to be thing is, when you're a new player, it's okay to be a new player. And when you don't know anything about the game, it's okay not to know anything. In fact, it's normal. You know what I mean? Like, most people don't learn quickly. So, like, there's this strange expectation of, like, just rapidly absorbing new things and getting into, like, not everybody learns that way. And it's very frustrating when you try to tell people, like, hey, this is how people learn, right? A lot of people, it takes them time. It takes them so long. You got to give people a break, man.
Yeah, and I almost wonder, you bring up the Levin example, I almost wonder if, like, because he's so good at learning in, like, these other contexts, like 2D fighters, he goes into Tekken and it's just slightly different, and he's doing it on stream, so he feels like he has these expectations. He feels like that guy with the stick does exist, and he feels like it's his Twitch chat, and that's
that guy
why...
does exist because he's in the chat hitting
He's
him
in the
leg.
chat, yeah. He's in the chat saying lol when he doesn't tech the right way or something. I mean, I don't know what the example here is, but yeah.
And that guy in the chat probably sucks, by the way. That guy's probably awful. But in the chat, he's a god amongst men, right? Yeah. He could say whatever he wants.
Fucking, Twitch chat, man.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, the way I describe it is learning every skill is always the same, no matter what the skill is, in terms of the way you progress, right? Whether it's, you know, learning an instrument, learning a game, learning a new language, like learning how to beatbox, like whatever the skill, learning a fighting game, whatever the skill is. And so like the technique to use to learn those things are always going to be similar. It's always going to be the same kind of thing. You just have to, you know, aim for improvement rather than results and just like focus on it. I talk a lot about how learning any skill is like building a Katamari. I love Katamari Damacy.
I love that game.
It's the most relaxing game created by humans, right? Like I think a lot of learning is like having a Katamari, where like you start, it's a very small object and you roll and you see a cat and you're like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. Like the cat's so big. And so you're picking up like buttons and gumdrops and thumbtacks, and then eventually you're like grabbing the world and like picking up planets and stuff. It's a lot like that when learning anything. You got to start small, man.
The cat is the big combo. It's like I can't deal with that big combo right now. But then eventually, now I got the big combo. Now I can think about it. I got all these other fundamentals under control. This cat's nothing to me no more.
I can roll over that cat, no problem. In fact, who cares about the cat? I'm gonna go pick up a car. Like, you know what I mean? You're like, you just have all these skills you've amassed. And people, you know, the thing is, it's a lot, unlike Katamari, when people are learning, they don't recognize how much they've learned, you know? So you have to kind of remind yourself sometimes how bad you were or how little you knew weeks ago, and then come back and be like, damn, I know so much more now. And there's so much more to learn from where I am now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's really powerful. Yeah, people don't do that often.
I do all the bad things.
What are some of the bad things you do?
Fixate on what I don't know, downplay what's good. You know,
that's good though. I will say, well, the reason I say that's good is it's important for people to know that somebody who is like obviously as good as you are at Melee and other, like anything that you really delve into, and as much as you're good at commentary and all these other skills,
like my learning style, like that approach, it works when I go right when I'm immersed in it. And I know, like, the thing that I think sucks for me at this point in my life is like I don't have time to like immerse myself in anything at that level, but I still have the mindset of a person who can really be immersed.
You also have the expectations.
Yeah, right. I have crazy expectations, and I feel like, you know, I haven't super grown in like a number of different ways that I wish that I had in the past couple of years. I just haven't, like, my mindset, it's just not lined up with what I'm actually putting in. And so it's kind of one of these weird things where whenever I think about getting back into something, I'm always like, all right, well then I'll just dive super in, but I can't. And I don't really know how to mess around with my mindset, which is, I think, why I've been obsessed with like talking about that sort of thing for a while.
It's like rewriting muscle memory for your brain, right? Like it's not, some people really struggle with that. You know, there's some people that are like, when like you need to learn a new combo in a game or something, like you always do the old combo, like your brain just can't, like erasing and rewriting muscle memory in your brain is very tough for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wait, you said for some people, you don't think it's tough? You don't think it's tough for everybody?
Some people are they can just switch games and do, like for me, I can play 5 different fighting games in one day and just, the muscle memory is just there. I can just do it. Mm-hmm. But like for some people, it's very difficult. And I think it depends on how you learn, the speed at which you learn, how fast you can erase or rewrite muscle memory. Like, it's like how your brain, like, you know, it's like RAM in your brain.
This is something, right? No, it's funny. This is something that I've realized very concretely.
Do you mind if I just take one quick break? I'm feeling a little bit hungry.
Dude, take the quick break. Yeah, I got a thing to say anyway. Dude, this is something I realized you can train this too. So I was learning Ultimate, right? And there was this, you know, there's always kind of been this, you know, thing that people would say, which is like, it's way harder, you know, to go to a tournament, enter, you know, back then it was Brawl and Melee and then be Smash 4 and Melee. So it's like, you know, people would say, yeah, Mewtwo King, you know, it's incredible because he could go to a tournament and he'd do really well in both Melee and Brawl.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really get into Brawl. I didn't really get into Smash 4, but I was learning Ultimate. And I'd go to tournaments and I'd enter Ultimate at my local on Tuesdays. And then sometimes on Wednesdays, I'd go to WNF, Oakland, and I'd enter Ultimate and Melee and I'd play both. And so I'd have to do the switch back and forth. I was talking to Vineeth about this, apology man, because he would enter Marvel in Ultimate. He's a fucking Lucario player in Ultimate. And and we were talking about this. And I realized that I would go to majors. You know, I entered both games at like Big House, Genesis, a couple majors. And I noticed that if I had been going to WNF often, such that I was entering both Melee and Ultimate at WNF, then I could do it at the majors. But if there was ever a stretch where I'd stop going because work got busy, so I couldn't make the drive out to Oakland or whatever, and I stopped going to the local where I entered both Melee and Ultimate at the same tournament. Then if I went to a major and I tried to enter both games, it would be a disaster. I could not make the switch. Yeah. And then if I started going to WNF Oakland again, I entered both games. And it's funny because then I had this exact same realization with fighting games where the other day I started learning fighting herds. And I was practicing fighting herds for like 5 hours. And then I entered Ronin Rumble Grand Blue. And my first match, I played this Boss Raga player in Winners. And I lost to this guy because every time he grabbed me, I tried to throw tech with fucking M and H.
Heavy and medium or something?
Yeah, because I've been playing fighting herds and I'm not used to it. My hands are like, oh shit, the button layout, that's not how you grab in this game. And I was like, oh, this is really bad. I'm trying to throw and I'm getting fucking universal overhead. This is like the wrong. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. What I've realized is I need to do the thing that I did with Melee and Ultimate. I just needed to play both. If I have been playing 2 games or if I have been playing multiple games, I can make the switch. But if I try to just do it out of nowhere, actually even in the context of one game, talking about Melee, I used to be a Fox and Falco dual main back in the day. I dual main both characters. This was before I became a Fox solo main. And the thing about Melee is, that for different characters, they have different jump squat length. So Fox, when you press jump, he goes airborne frame 4. Falco, when you press jump, he goes airborne frame 6. So the thing that this really messes with, if you haven't been switching characters a lot where they have different jump squat animation lengths, is the timing to wave dash. Because you got to press jump, and then first frame or second frame, you get off the ground, you want to press the R button, right? So back when I was a Fox Falco dual main, I could do it like that. I could swap characters and I could cleanly wave dash with Fox and Falco, and it was totally fine. But now that I don't really play Falco, I'm mostly a Fox player. Now when I try to go and I play Falco and I haven't touched him for a while, or I try to make the switch, I'm just like, fuck, man. I try to wave dash, I do too fast, my character's just jumping like a dumbass. And it's totally, I realized, this is totally something you can train. And I mean, I think that the thing was back then, no one really at a high level was swapping between the games at majors the way Mewtwo King was. It was really only Mewtwo King that was doing it, so everyone was kind of wowed. Everyone was like, oh shit, Mewtwo King, he's the only guy that can go to a tournament and play Melee and Brawl. And now I'm kind of realizing, well, that, like anything else, is a skill, and that's something that Mewtwo King just got good at. And it's something that he told himself, I need to be able to do this, and he was able to do it. But everyone else thought it was some magic, hocus pocus that he was doing because he was the only person who even tried. No one else was really entering Melee and Brawl at the same time.
If you play multiple characters in a game a lot, you kind of realize that, right? If you main multiple characters, I was always the guy that when I played games serious, I would learn the characters that were powerful, even if I didn't plan on playing them. I would just get a feel for like what range feels uncomfortable for them, like where they don't like to stand on screen against my character or against other characters, like what feels bad about them.
Right.
So I always learned a lot of characters, and I've always learned a lot of games. So for me, it's very easy to swap games or swap characters or relearn new things, right? Like I don't have that issue. Mm-hmm. But I think like on that point, it is very difficult for a lot of people to switch, right? It's not easy to focus on multiple games at once, especially if you're, I think, even newer to learning fighting games or learning games in general very seriously. Like the learning process is going to be the hardest when you're new, right? Like the more times you've learned characters and games and stuff, you kind of know how you want to approach, what's comfortable for you, that kind of stuff, right? So it gets a little easier each time, I think, for most people. And so for what I do too is like, I teach a lot of people on stream. My way of doing this is I try to learn a new game like once a month or once every couple of months, just to remind myself what it feels like to be new and just get the shit kicked out of you, right? Like, so it's important to remember what most people feel like when they're learning new games. So when you explain something, everybody's been that guy that's like, well, you can't do this, just do this. It's not that, you know what I mean? You have to, you need the empathy of like, oh yeah, it's actually difficult to do this for lots of people. It's not easy for what they're trying to do, right? So yeah, switching characters like that, it's tough, man. I mean, there's people that enter 7 tournaments at some fighting events, right? And you're just like, what the fuck is this guy doing? How does he do that?
I want to actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually want to ask about this because this is something that I sort of feel like I noticed, and I don't know if this is my imagination. I feel like there used to be this kind of paradigm for the guy like a Tokido or like a, I mean, even Daigo kind of did this, I guess, but I think Tokido is probably the most notable example, or Kazunoko, where they would go to a tournament and they would enter like 6 games and they top 8 like 5 of them, or some shit. And I feel like you just don't see that anymore. Do you feel like that style of going to tournaments for fighting gamers? I mean, I can't comment at all. I have no idea. Do you feel like that's on its way out for some reason? Do you feel like people you have to take Street Fighter V more seriously now because it's like, you're a esports pro, and so you can't be wasted? Do you feel like there's, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, because I feel like that used to be a thing and now it's not.
I think it's a couple of things. One, I think if you want to win at whatever game you're playing now, it's like the most difficult it's been, right? Like it's just so many people playing it. There's so many, as you guys know, right? Every day there's a new 18-year-old kid that shows up that plays online that's just incredible, and you're like, how can I defeat such a monster? Like he moves twice as fast as me. He never makes mistakes. Like how is it? His game theory is great. Like his strategy is great. Like I don't understand, right? These new kids show up. So yeah, the level of competition has, I think, increased even from when I started playing fighting games. And I remember going to fighting game tournaments 10 years ago, right? And being like, oh yeah, like I can play a couple of different games. Like looking at it now, it's like the competition is brutal, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, you know, when your focus is divided like that, it is more difficult to compete and do well, you know? So I think that it's probably just that maybe there's not a game that interests them to the same level that makes them want to play multiple games or are interested in it, or they feel like their ability will like lower because they're focusing on other stuff. I always felt like the reason I stopped entering tournaments is I always felt when I commentated and entered tournaments, I did both worse. So like my ability to commentate and my ability to play was always worse if I did both at a tournament. So I kind of just decided I should usually pick one. And so even if the dip was small, it was noticeable to me. And so that's what mattered, right? And I'm sure some players are the same way. If their attention or their focus is split, they notice little things that they could have maybe fixed or had time to think about if they just focused on one game.
Are there
This seems like a little more connected than it used to be?
The FGC? For sure.
Yeah.
I think
Toph, I'm wondering if like, so, you know, maybe people get to like the good, you know, you start to be a good player and maybe people are playing multiple games, and then you figure if somebody's starting to get real results in one game over another, then they're going to start taking that game more seriously. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, like, you know, if the scene's more connected, then it kind of makes sense that people will be finding their way to the game that they're really good at. Where I feel like in the past, like Street Fighter was the tentpole game. And so, like, everybody was playing that, and not everybody was playing the other games. Or if you did play the other games, it was kind of a side game.
Yeah. I think at the top level, a lot of people are not going to want to rotate, right? If they're great in their game and they're doing great at it, they're not going to want to switch. I think at a lower level or like a more casual level, fighting game players now especially play everything. Like they're like, dude, I'll try this game, I'll try that. It's like people are very open to trying anything, right? So I think that definitely exists. But yeah, if somebody's having success in something, it's probably more likely that they'll stick to it. There are players at a high level or players at a mid-level or low, whatever level that play multiple games. But yeah, in general, it's like if you're like at a level where it doesn't matter, like you're not trying to win Evo at whatever game, right? Your focus is play and have fun. I think people play everything, like way more than they used to. And your point about Street Fighter is especially true because the attitude used to be like, if you weren't good at Street Fighter, you weren't a good fighting game player. Like, who cares if you're the Guilty Gear champion? I went 0-2 at my Street Fighter local. I'm just better than you. You know what I mean? Like, that was the actual attitude, which is an absurd attitude, right?
Yeah, right.
But it was the attitude people had was like, if you don't play this game, right, you're just not good, and nobody cares about your game.
Well, that was the Snake Eyes quote that got beamed on really hard after the exhibition you commentated.
Yeah, I've made fun of that quote at least 75 times. Yes.
Well, now we got the footage. Arxis players.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, you know, Tekken, people love Tekken now, right? Everybody's like, oh, Tekken's such a neat game. Everybody loves it. These Tekken players have been around for a long time playing. They've all been playing Tekken 15 years. It's not like they suddenly got good in 2 years when everybody was interested in Tekken now. These players have been world class.
No respect.
Yeah, they just. It's like you just didn't know they were out there. Nii existed and was a god at Tekken 5 years ago. You just didn't know he existed, so you just thought, I don't know who Nii is. He's probably not that good. You know what I mean? It's like
some guy. Yeah, if fucking Diego Mejoras played that game, he'd watch him. No problem.
Up and down, wax on, wax off.
It'd be over. Yeah.
I don't think I heard anybody say it, but I definitely got that vibe. From like playing Street Fighter, I got the vibe that like even if you were really good at a different game, it just felt classist, kind of.
Oh yeah. I remember somebody at my local. I was playing KI, right? And like I remember I played in tournament and I remember winning. I like won KI or whatever, or Injustice, whatever that week, right? I did really well in tournament. I remember a guy saying like, oh yeah, like, I don't play that game, but if I did, I could probably top 8 at Evo in it. And I was like, did you enter the Street Fighter tournament today? He's like, yeah, I went 0-2, but like, I was like, dude, imagine having it in your mind that you're like an 0-2 local player, which is nothing wrong with it, but thinking that the competition was so weak in another game that you could go top 8 at Evo in it. And it's just like that kind of mindset was just so absurd, but it was common.
Yeah.
Imagine.
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 Yeah, it's wild. Well, I mean, it's
no appreciation for like other games or communities or scenes or talent, right? It's just so like.
Well, I remember. I mean, you know, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned this. I mean, I really had this vibe. I mean, to be fair, you know, I think there's. I'll preface this by saying I think there's less in common between Smash and other fighting games than, you know, say 2D fighters with each other, right? But I mean, I remember it was funny, you know, watching Leffen kind of go through his Dragon Ball FighterZ arc, where, you know, I think at first people were like, well, you know, this guy's like, yeah, he's number one on the ladder or whatever, but, you know, he's a Smash player, like he's not going to beat anybody. And then I think the first big moment where people were like, oh shit, was when he 3-0'd Dogura at Summit of Power, right? And people were like, oh, all right, well, that's a good player he beat. You can't say anything about that.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you pay attention, right, you know that he's good at other games. You know what I mean? Like, he played KOF, he played Marvel, like, he's played Street Fighter. It's like, if you don't pay attention, it's easy to go Smash player bad. You know what I mean? Right. It's, like, really easy to just be that guy. But, yeah, I mean, you can't win with those people. You know, and whoever that is, like, you can't win with. Like, the reality, it doesn't matter. It only matters what the snap memeiest thing you can say that's funny, right? Like, if you pay attention, you know it's not true.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I there's this kind of trope that I've realized recently is and I used to actually parrot this a lot. And I've realized this kind of thing, so it kind of affects characters in games, but it's something that I've realized is kind of overly memed on, and it's not really true, which is people will say that, like, okay, when you start playing a fighting game, you gotta play like these sorts of characters, or you're always gonna be bad. Or if you start playing fighting games, you want to start with this kind of game, or you'll never have footsies or something. Like, you see this a lot. It's funny because, I mean, this has come up a lot with Granblue recently, where a lot of these exhibitions, for some reason, both in Japan and in North America, for some reason, there's this trend where a lot of the really good Granblue versus players are BB tag players. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, that's the whole joke with Majin Obama and all that. It's like these BB tag players are playing this fucking whack-ass game where assists are flying all around. And there's fucking particle effect. Yeah, there's no fucking footsies.
His quote was, if BB tag was your first fighting game, you'll never be good at fighting games. That's what he said.
There you go. There you go. And then you're watching these BB tag players play Granblue, and their footsies are like some of the best. And, you know, they're playing very fundamentals, you know, they're like punishing fireballs with supers, and they're doing all the things you would expect a good Street Fighter player to do. And you're like, well, okay, so what's going on here? And I used to say this about in Smash, like, I remember Wizrobe, you know, now is known primarily for his Melee Falcon, which is very methodical and very patient and very textbook, you know, super sharp reaction time. He got his start on the kind of the national stage. He was a PM Sonic player. Now, if you've ever seen PM Sonic, you basically press the B button and it locks on your opponent with a little targeting reticle, and you fly at him, and it's like this homing attack, and you do that over and over, and they kind of explode off screen. And I remember watching him, and I'd never heard of this guy Wizrobe before. He was like 13 or whatever, and he was blowing up Callball, who's a very storied old school Fox player. And I was like, this guy is playing the most fraudulent, gimmicky fucking no footsies ass. He's mashing on that B button, and he's got this broken ass move. This guy is never going to be good at anything in his life except for this stupid fucking character. If I wanted to pick up this character, I could probably do it. And at the time, I mean, I really believed it. And then, you know, I found out he's entering Evo or whatever with Captain Falcon. I'm like, this guy is going to try to play a character like Captain Falcon. You got to have fundamentals. Like, you can't fuck up. If you're off stage, you're going to get edge guarded. It's going to be ass. There's no way some fucking fraudulent, gimmicky PM Sonic player. And now it's 2020. People forgot about the Sonic arc, and now he's the best Captain Falcon player, whatever, you know, one of the three best. Same way with Ice Climbers players. It's like, people, if you're a fucking Ice Climbers player, man, you're not going to learn how to fucking play ground game. You're going to rely on your stupid wobble.
Thing over and over.
Your wave dash is all weird. You're not going to be able to learn how to dash dance, blah, blah, blah. You know, and then fucking, you know, Army comes on the reads, and he's watching people with Captain Falcon. You know, Infinite Numbers switches over to Fox, and he's one of the best Foxes on the East Coast or whatever. He doesn't enter tournaments, but it's the same kind of thing. And I kind of feel like there's this, like, trend where people will always say, like you said, the Majin Obama quote, if BB Tag's your first fighting game, you'll never blah, blah, blah. Ice Climber's your first character, you'll never be good at it. And I feel like it's so overplayed, and I feel like the more that I watch these instances, it's just like, it doesn't really matter. Like, the way you start doesn't really matter. And you can just, if you're lacking in a certain skill set, you can just pick it up if you've got the mind for improvement. Sometimes people get lazy, and so they don't bother learning the skill set that they're deficient in or whatever. But I feel like it's so overplayed. And the more examples that the bigger of a data set I collect, the more I realize it's this meme that's not really true.
Yeah, I mean, when people ask me they'll come in my chat and say, "Hey, what character? If I'm a beginner, what character should I pick in this game?" And I always say like, whoever you think is cool, man. Because no matter how good or how bad you are or whatever, like you're gonna be bad at first, and learning is hard. So it doesn't matter who you pick. If they're a beginner character and you're losing with a beginner character, it feels so bad, right? You're like, everybody said this guy's easy and I can't win with them and I'm losing. Like, I must be bad. So, like, you know, I say pick whoever you want, whoever looks cool, man, because no matter who you pick, you have to learn how to play the game. You got to learn all this anyway. And a thing that came into my chat this week, someone said, hey, I want to learn fighting games and I want to learn how to be fundamentally sound. What fighting game should I learn to be good? And I was like, whatever fighting game looks sick, because no matter what fighting game you play, you're gonna have to learn how to deal with zoning. You're gonna have to learn how to deal with rushdown. You're gonna have to learn how to like punish people whose movement is bad, or whip punish, or like all those skills will exist in whatever game you play. And so I wouldn't worry about getting fundamentally sound at whatever. Like people always say, like, you know, people will say like, if you can't play on the ground, you can't play. You know, Kazunoko is like one of the greatest fighting game players of all time. When he plays Street Fighter 4, he jumps, and that's all he does. He only jumps, right? And if he's not jumping, he's doing full screen EX lunge. When he plays Grand Blue, he plays Lancelot. At the start of the round, he backdashes and does EX Fireball and runs behind the EX Fireball, or does EX lunge, which is full screen plus on block. That's it. He does not stand there and play on the ground at all. You know why? Because why the hell would I do that? I don't pick a character that's good at that. I don't care about doing that. Why fight your honorable walk 10 steps back and duel if you turn around to walk 10 steps back, I run up and stab you in the back. You're dead. It doesn't matter how it gets done. It's like, if I win the match, I've won the match.
It's right? so true. It's so true.
Who cares?
I remember feeling confused by that. You know, I like heard like, oh yes, like one of the sickest, like most badass Japanese fighting game players is Kazunoko. Who did he play? Yun or whatever?
Yun. Yeah.
I watched him and I was like, oh, man, I hate watching it. Feels fraudulent. Like it really does. It's like hard to respect it. But
like it's one of those things where you look at the play style and you're like, this guy's real ignoramus. Like you can't stand him, right? You're like, oh, it's so despicable. But then like he does it in every game and he wins in every game. And there must be a method to his madness, right? Otherwise.
Are the characters not good? Like, what? I wonder what it is actually. Now that I think about it, is it actually hard to execute? Is it a combination of a lot? Probably it is a combination of a lot. You know, doing a lot of things correctly and like actually just being good.
He is just very good, and like I think a lot of some of the characters he plays are easy, and some are hard, and some of them are top. Almost all of them are top tier. He always he finds a character that allows him to Kazunoko in every game. Like he's very good at that. When he played Dragon Ball, for instance, when he won the World Finals in Season 1, his combos were trash. He had the worst, like he by far the least optimal combos, like the worst like tech in the game, understanding thing, like all of that was bad. But like he knew how to execute. Like he would. This sounds familiar, right? He would jump at you, and either he would super dash or he would regular jump, and it was just a guess. It's like playing the dive kick mix up with Yun every time, right? And he would just do the most simple, solid, straightforward thing that would allow him to hit you, do a mix-up. If it doesn't work, put him back in the same neutral. Like, he plays a very similar style in every game. He doesn't care what it is. It's like he finds the characters that allow him to execute and enforce the same kind of guesses that he's comfortable at making over and over, and he plays that style, and that's all there is to it.
That's so frustrating. Yeah, it sucks to watch, though, because it's like you could see what they're doing so obviously, and it's like frustrating that it works. It's almost like in conversation, you know, somebody's just talking and talking and talking and talking and getting away with it, right? Like the game's not enforcing the fact that like you need to shut up every once in a while and be respectful.
The problem is like when you watch him do this, people try and he just talks over them. Like he just keep going.
And then it's like hard to understand like why, like what's going on. That's where I sometimes I get. That's why I think people don't like Puff. I feel like people don't get why, and I don't feel like I know how to explain it to them. To be honest, I wish I did.
Dang, all these years and it's still that hard.
I don't think Hungrybox is playing the same game that we're playing. I swear to God. Like the more that I watch him, I feel like he's the same with the laser. Like we're all expecting him to play like Super Smash Bros. Melee as we've conceived it, but there's like a thing that he's doing that we're just not thinking about.
I definitely think he plays the player better and you know and more than a lot of other people are willing to, you know, because the Puffs that emulate him just don't get his level of success at all. Like no one is near his level at all in terms of Jigglypuff. So it's like, And it's not for like the character being, you know, easy or hard to play or whatever. Like with Axe and Pikachu, it's a little different, right? Because like people can't execute the things Axe is doing. Like you have to be really, really insane with your execution to like attempt to do what Axe is doing. With Hungrybox, I don't think it's really that. You know, it's just he is so good at like kind of like exploiting people's tendencies and like looking at. So it's just so much harder to. And also he's the kind of player that he won't really talk about. I mean, I think this is the kind of thing that people always say is like Hungrybox doesn't really talk about his strengths. Like he doesn't really like ever go and talk about what he's doing. And like he once after Summit, he once had an interview, right? I think he had an interview where he kind of alluded to like, this is the kind of situation for I'm looking through this sort of thing. But then he immediately cut himself off and he didn't go into it at all.
Wow.
So he's very like, you know,
He's been trying to say like in the last year.
Yeah. I think he tries to hide, you know, his style of reads and things like that. One of the things I noticed when I was really studying HBox versus like Fox, for example, is something that I noticed was he does this thing where he'll like, as soon as they start the laser game up, they'll do, so say you're on Battlefield, right? It's got the side platforms. So he'll go on the side platform when you start doing the full jump lasers and then he'll like shield on the side platform, whatever, so that he doesn't take the laser damage. And then the Fox sees that as an invitation to like start getting aggressive, and then he'll like shield drop and like go for like an upper or a backer or something like that. So he's like very good at like reading the opponent's body language and like turning that into a situation where he lures them in. And he's also very good at like minimizing the damage he's taking in the meantime. So I think he's doing this kind of body language reading thing that like people aren't really talking about that much. But I mean, I don't know. I should just do a deep dive on it.
It's like he's forcing movement. It sounds like he's like trying to force movement when it's not even necessary. Like it's not even necessary. But you're like, oh, he's up on the platform. I can just, you know, I can go up there and do it. But like 2 seconds before that, you were just shooting lasers at him from far away. Like, why did it suddenly become like, oh, I'm safe shooting lasers now? I should chase him.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like people at the end of the day with all these things, I think people want an explanation that feels satisfying, and when we don't get it, you know, then it's like we want someone to stop this thing from happening. Now, I feel like if we could analyze Puff well enough to call out like a player getting impatient, you know, I feel like that would feel so much more satisfying if we were right about it too. You know, if you could really show somebody that Hungrybox is like, you know, dangling the string and, you know, the cat's supposed to sit there and wait until it's the right moment, but like the cat's getting antsy and like that's the problem. I think people would have a lot more fun watching.
Have you guys played against Hungrybox?
I've played against Hungrybox, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we both have at least in friendlies. Have you played against him in tournament, Bobby?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He beat me in Genesis. He was my I lost to only Puffs at Genesis.
Mango and HBox. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the first player at that level. He was the first top player that I noticed was like way easier to fight in friendlies. I remember NCR the tournament. Well, again, it's that same top 8 that we commentated for the first time. I actually housed him for that tournament. And I played him in, you know, we played a lot of friendlies at my house. And he even made a remark at one point. He was like, dude, I think he was like, I feel like you're beating me like a third of our games. And I was like, I felt like he was being generous. I feel like it was like not a third. But yeah, I was beating him like a fair bit. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you know, this guy's supposed to be like, you know, one of the best players in the world. But I'm like, I'm doing really well against him in friendlies. And then he won the tournament, right? He like, you know, fucked Mango up, fucked everyone else up. And I was like, huh. That's really interesting. And he was the only player where I really felt that kind of like that big of a discrepancy in friendlies and tournament. Where I almost feel to this day, I almost feel like he said it as like he was trying to like fuck with me. Like in case he had to play me in tournament or something, like he wanted to lure me into a false sense of security. Or I don't know what. Like to this day, I feel like there was something there. But I've never felt that with anyone else where they were that much easier to beat in friendlies. It was really weird.
I was never close to beating him, but I never understood Puff. To be honest, like I
had a good matchup.
I'm thinking about this now. You know, I feel like my mind around the game is not very organized. I think whatever I did early on in my career, I kind of built like my intuitive sense, and it was really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I took time away from the game, and you know, my muscle memory changed, and the environment changed without me being immersed in it. You know, I kind of got out of sync, and I feel like I don't even understand what I did before that was good. You know, I'm like all confused. But especially floaties, I don't feel like I ever really understood it in any mental level. Like even when I beat floaties when I was, you know, earlier on in my career, I don't feel like I knew why. They just kind of died sometimes.
Sometimes they went off the stage.
Yeah, I really feel like I would just, I don't know.
I feel like with floaties, there's this aspect to it. like with floaties, you know, compare like a lot of the heavier, you know, the faster falling characters in Smash in Melee, like you can do the same combos, and you have the same, or I should say, you have the same win conditions, like with Fox.
Yeah.
With Falco, with Marth, with Sheik, like with Sheik, it's like, okay, Marth and Sheik, it's like, okay, if I get them to 40 or 50 as Falcon, I can do up throw, and now it'll combo into up air, and then I get them off stage, I edge guard them. With Fox and Falco, it's like if I get a grab, I can get my tech chase going, I'm gonna kill them with the knee at 70% or whatever. But then with floaties, I feel like the win conditions are a lot more variable, and they're a lot more, because you can't combo them to death ever. Basically, you really have to. Usually you're winning neutral at kill percent, or if you get some combo in a kill, it's very situational. So I feel like what happens with floaties a lot of the time that gets a lot of players is because your win condition is so different from stock to stock, it's really easy to be inconsistent at the matchup because sometimes you just find that great nair that combos into a knee at 70%, but other times they live to 150. And it's like, unless you're really going back and studying your own sets, you're not really gonna know why.
Yeah.
You're not going to realize why sometimes I just can't fucking kill these characters, but sometimes they explode.
Yeah, it's kind of like in most matchups, the rule is build up percent, get the KO, and
get the KO.
Sometimes you edge guard them, and like it's an early KO.
Yeah,
that's kind of generally how it goes. You know,
and
you
then
got
with
some arthritis, but you don't have to think about it. But yeah,
right.
The edge guard not really, right? You don't really edge guard them in the same way, and you don't build up percent and then kill them like
right. This is why I think Fox is the best character.
Beautifully put.
Yeah, this is why I think Fox is the best character against Puff. You know, like at least at a practical level. At least at a I mean, Zane's making a case right now that maybe at the absolute pinnacle, Marth might be better, but I think Fox is the best at a practical level because Fox actually gets to run the same game plan versus Puff every stock, and you can, you know, you're basically, I mean. Yeah, the up throw up air, they can get out of the up throw up air, blah, blah, blah. But it's like you really are mostly playing the same versus Puff all the time. The win condition, like the goalpost isn't really shifting the same way it is with, I think, a lot of characters. Where when you watch, like, I don't know, Sheiks versus, like Plup, you know, he stopped trying Sheik versus Puff because if you watch him versus Eve, I mean, he was beating H-Box in tournament sets, but it looked different every time. And then you play Fox, and it's like, okay, now I'm kind of doing the same thing. You know, it's like everyone knows what Fox versus Puff is supposed to look like. And I think that really does matter a lot at high level. Just in terms of consistency, like, it's too hard. It's very, very hard if you want to win tournaments and your win condition is changing every stock. It's tough.
Well, you know, one thing I was going to say about fighting games in general, and it's like at any level, right, is the thing about fighting games, and you know, people will compare them to chess sometimes, and I always think that's a bad comparison because when you think about a game like chess, there's almost near infinite time by comparison to think, right? What makes fighting games interesting is that naturally there is an essence of reaction and speed that has to come out, and decision making is almost never perfect because you don't have time, right? You have to make snap decisions and judgments based on what's going on, right? So when you play against characters where the decision making is extremely consistent and familiar, right? Especially in matchups like that where the objectives of both characters are often clear. It's way easier to make the correct decision the majority of the time based on what's happening, and you see players do that often. When decision making gets cloudy, and even like, you know, when you're watching a match after it's over and you're doing analysis and you're like, honestly, he could have done this or this, but I don't even know which is better. You know, like when you're like, it's not even clear which decision is better. Yeah. When you pause the game and sit and think about it, that's when decision-making in fighting games gets incredibly difficult, right? And it sounds like in this situation, it's one of those cases where even if you think to yourself, like, is it right to chase here? Should he wait? Like, honestly, it's not even clear, right? When when it's not clear like that, making decisions in real time is incredibly difficult because how can you even say, like, oh, this is what he should be doing when you're like, in post, I don't even know. We got to sit here and like put our brains together, and it's like very difficult to say, right? That is the difficulty of fighting games is unlike something like chess or card games where the knowledge you have obtained already what your opponent could be doing and you know all the possible moves, like in that space, in that speed, even if you think what your decision is correct and they're off by pixels, you could be making the wrong choice without even realizing it. Even if they were pixels over, it would be the correct choice. You know what I mean? It's what makes those games so difficult and what makes when people do make the correct decision consistently impressive, right? That's what makes it so interesting.
Right. I've been playing a lot of chess actually recently. It's kind of, you know, there's this chess boom on Twitch, right? So the last 2 weeks, I've actually been playing like you know, at least an hour of chess a day. I'm playing a lot of chess. And the thing that's really cool is, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever seen analysis engines in chess. So chess.com, every time you play a match, if you're like a subscriber or whatever, you can click on the analyze button and the computer will run like, you know, it'll run a report on your whole game and it'll generate a graph.
Yeah.
of who is winning at any given point in the match. So it's like white's winning, it goes up, and then it's like, oh, white made a bad move here, black starts winning, goes boom. And then so it's like this. And at every given move, it plots like it shows you the 3 or 4 best moves you could have made. And it says, if you make this move, then white's winning, but it's got this kind of arbitrary point thing where 1 point roughly corresponds to like 1 pawn or whatever. And it'll be like, yeah, if you made this move, the computer thinks you were plus 1.2 here. So you're like up 1.2 pawns. You make this move, that's not such a good move. Now you're only plus like 3 or like 0.3. And it's like, that's kind of the beauty. I was thinking about it, like, damn, what if we could get, I mean, I don't know how the hell it would work in any sort of fighting game, but like, yeah, can you imagine if the computer's like if you could just say, yeah, if you went for like, standing whatever heavy punch here, yeah, you'd be like plus this or whatever, like in terms of like how
your
good,
EV.
Whatever, yeah, your EV, but then, yeah, if you do this here, if you back off, but it's like, yeah, we don't have anything like that. If we did, oh, man, it would be so easy to analyze your game. Because the chess, every time you make a wrong move, you just go to the fucking computer, you're like, hey, computer, what should I have done? And they're like, yeah, it turns out you should have done this. You would have been 0.1 better. And you're like, all right, cool. Next time, I'm going to do that the next time in that situation. It's fucking, done.
In fighting games, the closest thing to that is us, right? Like when a match is happening, we say like, he's down a stock here, but actually it's really close because this character can die really fast at this percent, and so like
say it all the time in teams. Like if you look at stocks, it's not the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even in Dragon Ball, like one person will have 1 character or the other guy's got 3 characters, and you say like, actually, this match is closer than it looks because X, Y, is, it's our job to like. In Dota, they have a thing in Dota Plus, right? When you watch the international, they have a thing that says which team is winning. And as the fights are happening or as gold is happening, it swings and it says this team has a 90% chance to win, 10%, 20, 30, and it shows it as well, right? And it is our jobs to kind of be that person and have the EV of like, this move is correct here, right? And, he did this thing and this is really smart. And, oh my God, that might have been the game right there because he just made this. Why did he commit so hard? And like, one thing I love about fighting games is, when someone does something and it works, but you still say, I don't like that move at all. It worked, but I think it's such a bad move. You know what I mean? Like that is something that's so fascinating about decision making is that even if it works, you can sometimes be like, I don't know if that was correct.
Right.
Like it feels like such a commitment or a risk, and if it doesn't pay off, the downside is so tremendous. Right?
I mean, wake up DPs will hit sometimes, but they also get blown up.
Yeah.
How do you know how they power the Dota Plus thing? Like, do you know how that is that? An
I'm
algorithm
not sure. Like, I think it calculates like when the heroes have like spikes and like items and gold differences.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. I love looking at it on Dota Plus. It's really cool.
Okay. Yeah, I could see. I mean, like in Valorant, they show you at the end of the game. They show you what your like econ rating or whatever was, which is I guess calculated on like basically how efficient you were with like the the weapons you're buying, how often you were dying, and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see something like that, like just showing some rating that's calculated based off of how every player's doing, and then they sum that up or something, and yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, with the chess engine. Yeah, we got to do that. I guess
Melee Plus.
Yeah, Melee Plus. We are Melee Plus. Oh shit, we are Melee Plus.
Hey, can I ask SAJAM, how do you think you get better in situations where decision making is cloudy?
When it's nebulous?
Something like. Is it more about analysis? Is it more about trying new things?
It's so hard for me when I think about situations like that. It depends on if it's in the moment or if it's something you're watching later. You know what I mean? Like in the moment, I'm sure you're the same way. Where like something will happen and you'd be like, dude, every time this moment happens, my opponent is always doing this. He's not even. There's nothing working up here, right? He's just doing the same thing. I need to do this to beat this option. Or sometimes you like shop it in match. I've had this too, where like in the middle of a match, I'll be like, I don't know how to stop this thing he's doing. Maybe I'll try this. And you try something and it doesn't work. So you try something and it doesn't work. You try something, it doesn't work. But in a situation where you make a decision and you're not sure if it's correct or not, I think you probably have to go back to like, when I think about a situation like this, I think about like, okay, there's a couple of things that define a matchup that I try to think about at all times. And particularly in the beginning, this is something I picked up from card games. But when it starts, you think to yourself, who is the aggressor in this matchup? Who's the defender in this matchup? Is it neither? Right? Are both characters naturally aggressors, but one is better at defense in this particular matchup, or the head-to-head, or even if it's a matchup where one character is aggressive, the other's defensive, do they play opposites, right? Like, sometimes people play defensive characters rather aggressively, or it depends on the matchup. The other thing you have to think about is like, is there a person that needs to take more or less risk to win the match? Mm-hmm. And is this moment an example of a position where I can afford to take a risk, or I should take a risk, or I feel like I need to take a risk? Like when thinking about those options. The other thing is, what positions on the screen do you win? Is this an example of a position on screen that is genuinely negative for you usually? Like it's a position you usually lose? In situations like that, I think you're more okay with taking risks, right? Or more okay with accepting that what you do might not work, or, you know, accepting that maybe instead of engaging when it seems like your opponent might be in a bad spot, like backing up because, well, I don't know, like maybe that is not so clear. And if I overcommit, I might die here. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to measure like all of those different things and think about it in the context of a match. I think like Leffen talked about this on Twitter where, remember, we talked about this, we tweeted each other about this, about how he always gets in his own head about some matchups where he feels like I lose this matchup, so I have to take big risks, I have to gamble. And you can see in his gameplay that he plays like the matchup is lost from the start.
Yeah.
I think that can happen to you a lot. And you really have to look at those situations and be like, even if it is a negative matchup, I have to consider like, when is the best, when can I make the best gambles in the match, right? Like, is there a spot that's good to gamble or worse to gamble or bad to gamble? It really depends. Like some matchups, like you have to go off stage. You're like, I don't want to, I don't think it's good, but it's my only chance maybe at killing this character at a low percent or something, right? You know what I mean? There's feelings like that I think you have to evaluate. And yeah, part of what makes fighting games so fascinating to me is that even if you think about it all day, all night, it's sometimes not clear. But you can do your best, I think, to evaluate it by thinking about like setting those parameters and kind of like charting it and thinking about it yourself. That's kind of what I do.
Maybe it's just something that came to mind that I should try is like the kind of positions or whatever where you should maybe be curious, you know? I'm just kind of thinking about like when you bring up Leffen, I have a feeling that doesn't have a lot of curiosity about how could the story not play out this way where I'm probably going to lose unless I roll the right dice. You know, maybe you can tell a different story.
He strikes me too.
Really don't know.
I was going to say, he strikes me as the kind of player where if you say, well, why not try this risk? He's like, oh, he can just stop it with this, right? He's like, you know, that kid, when you're a kid, you're like, I shoot you with my laser gun. And he's like, no, I have a bulletproof, you know what I mean? He's like, I got laser-proof armor. Like, he strikes me as that kind of guy too, where you have to be careful about thinking like, if I do this, my opponent will always have the correct answer. And fighting games are about creating recklessness and fast scenarios where your opponent queuing up the correct answer is difficult. And if you put enough pressure to break mental stack or cause your opponent to flounder for a moment, right? They say blunder in chess. If you can make your opponent blunder for just a moment, that can create situations like that, right? So you kind of do have to think, you know, am I applying enough pressure in this moment that it's likely my opponent will panic and make a mistake? Is there no pressure? Am I the one who's kind of just committing to something big? Like you know, when Hungrybox jumps up on a platform and they're lasering and all of a sudden they're like, I should chase. Like, he's just making that happen without even really committing to anything. He just jumps up on a platform across the stage and the guy's like, puff high ground, me attack. You know what I mean? Like, it's why attack? Why not just like, you know, you have to really think about how he's forcing action there and whether it is actually worth committing to it. And that stuff, that's what makes fighting games so sick, dude. You can think about it, even if you're not a high level player, thinking about your own decision making like that is so fun. Like, why did I do that there? And my favorite thing to do when playing a fighting game is mid match, try stuff. Like, there is nothing like live play to just try new things. And who cares if you die or you lose? Like, I had some match I was learning Skullgirls, and I was like, dude, I can't reversal DP out of like pressure. This guy keeps resetting me in the same way, and I can't reversal DP. I don't understand the DP timing. I spent 3 games in a row where I was like, I will never block a mix-up. Every time I get put in a mix-up, I'm going to try to DP to get the timing. And I just died every match trying to DP. But by the end of like the 3rd match, I was like, all right, I know how to DP out when I want to. Yeah. Like, I've got the timing figured out.
And then you can start blocking again.
3 matches. Those matches were so fast because I was getting destroyed trying to mash DP like an idiot. But now I have the timing, so like, who cares about that? In the 4th match, you try to mix me up, it's over, bro. I'm gonna DP you every time.
Yeah.
That's a really nice side benefit that you speed up the feedback cycle. You know, by getting blown up.
You're just dying. You're like, well, there's always instant rematch, right? You get back right back.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I was wondering, Toph, when you were saying like, you know, the competition and how you can't enter 5 games and like, you know, be in top 8.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the tools have gotten much better. Like, just talking about speeding things up. Like in Melee, the tools have gotten much better, and I know that most fighting games now they have pretty dope training modes. I don't know how big of a deal that is, but I do feel in Melee for sure, we would not be this good if we didn't have the tools that we have today. No way. No chance. If people were practicing the way that we practiced 10 years ago, would they be this good?
Yeah, no chance.
You know, when it comes to training mode too, a lot of new players in particular, I think are quite bad at using it. But training mode, I think to me is dope, but there's people who are obsessed with training mode in a weird way.
Yep.
And I think, what I've described about like going into a match and just doing stuff and learning, that is one fine way to learn. And the way I describe training mode to people is training mode is for finding solutions, right?
Yeah.
You go to the match to find problems, right? You go into a match and you lose and you play, and matches are for finding issues. Training mode is for finding solutions, right? You go back in a training mode when you have some shit you need to work on. If you're in a match and you try to do something to stop somebody and you try 6 different options and none of them work, you got to go back to training mode and like set that exact situation. But it's for creating solutions to problems, right? I don't think you should go to training mode looking for, like your issues, right? You should go there to find solutions.
I was actually showing this
way
up
to put it.
Yeah, I was showing this up on stream yesterday. I think a lot of Smash players don't even like appreciate like the extent to which you can actually do this with 20XX now. I think a lot of people don't do it because they don't. It's like one of the weird. You got to go into the debug menu on 20XX. It's very complicated. It's a lot easier to do in most modern fighting games. Yeah. And I was showing like a scenario yesterday. I went on, I opened up because I did a talk yesterday on how Ultimate players just don't know how to lab. I mean, I'm sorry, but you guys just don't know how to lab. I was at Ultimate Summit 2, and a bunch of the top players there, not to name any names, they were talking about how they got this. There's this training mod kit that you got now that kind of like makes the computer in training mode DI, or like it'll do certain options so you can practice your combos and make sure they're working. And they were basically talking about how they're like, yeah, I got this training mode thing, I don't really know how to use it, and it doesn't seem that important. And I was like, that's insane. Like, that's like the Melee community was at that point of its growth at 1.2, and you guys will get over that eventually. But yeah, and I was like, okay, look, if you're used to Smash, you probably don't realize exactly the extent to what you can do in training mode in most modern fighting games. And I opened Granblue, and I was like, okay, so I play Charlotte. I play this character where I have this ball move. When I hit you with it, if I use the L version, it's -7. So I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, when I watch top players play this character, sometimes they'll do this L ball move, and even though they're -7, they'll let it rip again. And I'm like, how are they getting away with that? Because when I try that, I get blown up. And so I went into training mode, and I took a computer, and I had them record that move with me blocking it. And then I would press a different button. So they'd do the ball, and then they press a different button. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to block this, and I'm going to see if that button works against my option. So I'm like, cool, I block the ball, and then I try to do something. And then the computer hits me with that button. I'm like, oh, interesting. So you're telling me in this matchup, if they do this common answer to my ball move, so I can do ball, and then I can do my 2M, and it'll blow them up. Even though it's -7, it kind of ties in your Percival standing M thing. That move's busted, by the way. And then I was like, oh shit, and I tested this in a bunch of matchups. I'm like, cool, so in this matchup, L ball into 2M is really fucking good in neutral. In this matchup, it fucking sucks. It's like not that good because the RPS doesn't work on my favor. And then it turns out Catalina has a 7-frame 2M that she can hit confirm into super, and she actually just gets a real punish, so it doesn't work. It's not even an RPS. Catalina is, turns out, the only character, it's the only character in the whole cast, she just gets a real punish. And I'm like, all right, well, that's fucked up. That character's really fucking good. Yeah. So, and then, you go through all these different characters. You're like, oh, shit, as it turns out, blah, 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 based on these ranges. And I'm like, damn, how the fuck do I do this in Melee? Like, it's so much harder in Melee. I want to record fucking, okay, like, say Fox does drill forward in Melee or something. And I'm like, I want to practice the counterplay to that. Well, it turns out in Melee, you can fucking smash the eye to the drill and make it so it doesn't even combo into Shine anymore. So, like, there's so many more variables almost immediately with, like, how smash the eye works. And I'm like, man, it is way hard to test and lab things, And it, people developed in 2016 or whatever, they developed this whole flowchart. Armada and Left were throwing each other on the platforms, and it seemed like they get a fucking, guaranteed stock off of the platform tech chase. And then it turns out a couple years later, people realize, like, well, as it turns out, if you're using this up air flowchart on the platform tech chases, well, you can just smash the eye the first hit of the up air, and then you get out. And then it's like, fuck, well, there goes that whole flowchart. And it turned out no one realized you could really do that. Oh, but you can vary your up air timing so that only the second hit connects. Oh, but if you vary your up air timing, you can't do that to the tech in place. So you can only do that on the side techs. Now it's like, oh, okay, well, fuck. The whole RPS just changed because someone realized this little small thing.
And how many tournaments were won or lost based on that RPS that no one knew there was a counter to the whole time?
Exactly. And so it's like, fuck, man. So I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh, man, it is so much easier to test things in 2D fighters. Yeah. It's like, like fucking this move being such and such on block and Catalina getting a true punch, that's not going to change ever until they patch the game. And I'm thinking like, man, fuck. It's like, and then I just kind of had this moment where I was like, man, us Smash players have it hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, dude,
like,
you should see Daigo's lab when he labs himself in training mode. It's the strangest thing. I've never seen anybody lab like this. He just sets Ibuki to jump, and after she neutral jumps, she either does like crouching medium punch or like a jab. And like if she crouching medium punch, Daigo tries the whip punish. If she jabs, he tries to do nothing.
Right.
And it's like the strength. He's just drilling it. He's trying it 1,000 times in a row. Like his training mode, in between every match, he's He's drilling that for 20 minutes, right? Like in between every match, he's waiting for the next match. He's just trying it. And it's just repetition over and over.
How does he randomize it? Is that in training mode?
You can just set like
randomize it.
Yeah, you can set multiple states, right? So you do like recording 1 is neutral jump in a crouching medium punch. Recording 2 is neutral jump in a like crouching jab. And he just sets it to random intervals. Like it just plays one or the other. So sometimes he'll just jump and do the jab like 3 times in a row. And then on the 4th time he does crouching medium punch. And Daigo tries to sweep and he misses and he's like, that was my chance. So yeah, like the cool thing about most modern training modes is they're really good for that kind of stuff. And the repetition and just practicing stuff is so important. Like you don't just get it once, right? You do it a million times and you're still like, man, I wish I was better at this. Like,
and then the cool part, right, is then, you get good at it in training mode. And then in a real match, you build up this comfort zone where then you're like, okay, if I walk to this spacing, I have practiced this whip punch. If I walk to this fucking spacing, I know he's got 2 good moves. He might jab me, he might medium punch, and I'm going to be fucking ready for it. Yep. And so if you're ever like kind of lost in the moment, you're like, fuck man, there's a lot going on. My opponent's really good. What do I do? Wait a minute, but I got that one. There's that one fucking situation I practiced a lot in training mode. If I walk to that fucking spacing, I don't care what good button he thinks he's pushing. I know I can punish it. And you kind of put yourself back into that mode. They used to say, in Melee, it's like, you're playing Mango or whatever, but when you start calming him, it's just a fox, whatever. And so it kind of ties into that. Obviously, it's not entirely true in Melee with that example because there's Smashdown, all this kind of stuff. Like the really good players actually will, as it turns out, find some weird way to, but the general principle still holds.
It's like the thing I was going to say about that too is when it comes back to learning, the best feeling is too, if you're Daigo and you play that match and the Ibuki does jab and you do nothing, and then the Ibuki does crouching medium and you whiff punish, it doesn't matter if the Ibuki double perfects you after that. You're like, fuck yes, it's so good. You're like, I don't even care that you beat me. Who cares that I lost the round or I missed this or I missed that? I did the one thing I was practicing to get good at, right? That's kind of the attitude I think that is so conductive to learn. It's like so great for learning, but you have to drill into your head is like, you tried 9 things in a row. You keep trying it. You lose every match. You get the one thing you want to do. And you're just like, yes, I did the one thing that mattered to me to do. I don't care about losing matches if it's in the pursuit of learning something that you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like that's the most important. Even, the hardest thing too is, when you play someone and you could just beat them so bad if you wanted to, but you're like trying a new character or you're trying something new and you're like, I have to lose until I do it. You know what I mean?
You have to.
Hard.
It's hard. It's hard.
So hard.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that practice, that routine, by the way, it's like training 2 of the most important fundamentals. Like 1, not doing anything, which is hard to do.
Yeah.
And then 2 is like reactions.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
Kind of genius. I don't know.
Have you guys ever, when you're like playing a game and you're thinking to yourself, all right, my opponent, he's going to whip. I know I'm going to whip punish this move. He's going to do this move, right? The first time I see like a reaction, I'm going to hit it. And so you see the reaction, you swing, and it turns out he jumped. And you're just like,
it's the worst feeling. Oh, it's the worst feeling.
Or you're like, as soon as I see the movement, I'm going to hit my button. I'm going to whiff punish him. And he throws a fireball. And you're like,
it's the worst.
The next time I'm going to whiff punish this move. And you do it again. And you get hit by another fireball. And you're like, all right, I'm jumping, bro. Fuck it. And you jump.
Yeah, you throw the game plan out.
Yeah. Well, the worst.
I'm not doing this anymore.
The worst. Yeah. I think the worst feeling of all is like, okay, he's going to fucking do this. And I'm going to whiff punish it. And then he like staggers the timing. And then he does it. And you're just like, not ready for it. You're just like, oh, fuck, he just did it. What the hell was I doing? Like that little moment of doubt. Oh, it's such a bad feeling. It's like,
I blew it. It's over.
I blew it. It's really, it's so prominent. Fucking, it's so bad and fucking, like the supering a fireball, right? It's so big. You're like, he's gonna fireball. I'm gonna fucking super. And you're just like a hair late. And you're like, I knew what I was looking for. And I was just a hair late. He blocks it. It's the worst.
Where they try to throw a fireball and they get like medium punch.
Yeah. And then you see their arm reaching. You're like, that's got to be a fireball. And you do. Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst.
It's how it goes, man. It's the game. That feels so bad. You have to separate at that moment. You got to pull your brain out of there and be like, look, man, you got to pep talk yourself. Like, you rub your own shoulder. Like, man, it happens.
It happens. Yeah.
Got this champ. Ice him up. You're like, all right, next round's you. Next round's you, boss. You'll be all right.
I got to figure out a way. To make this practice work for me in Melee. Because I haven't found it. Like I just described, like, now that I'm kind of playing more 2D fighters, I'm realizing, like, the extent to which you can grind specific situations, 2D fighters, I want to think about, like, is there a way for me to do this in Smash? Like, is there a way that I can grind situations in Smash the same way? Like, I don't know.
It's hard.
I
If the
guess
training
you just
mode's
have
not
to-
good,
The training
it's tough.
mode's it's tough. Yeah, and it's not even. I don't even know if it's that because the 20xx hack pack now has a lot of there's stuff you can do like Uncle Punch is like specific drills or whatever. It's like you drill your it's like ledge dashes. It'll tell you like how many frames of invincibility you had, blah blah blah. But like neutral situations are weird, and I don't know. Melee's so analog that I wonder if it's. I gotta think about it. Is there even a way to really? Because you can do recordings now. You can do recordings in 20xx. I think it has this functionality. I think it even has the random. You can say 25% of the time that it does this, 50% of the time it does this, blah blah blah. I think you can even do that. But yeah, I wonder if it's maybe you have the Marth and you.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say maybe you have it's like Marth's here and you have him do like one dash dance and then dash tag. You have the Marth do 2 dash dashes dash tag. You have the Marth keep dash dancing. Maybe you do something like that or like 2 dashes in the air and you record a bunch of those and then you try to box him out like that. PP used to talk about on Smashboards. He had this whole thing called shadow boxing. This was basically trying to emulate this style like 10 years ago when the technology wasn't there. And his whole thing was you would take a computer and you would just visualize in your brain that they're doing these certain options. And then you drill it. So it's like, you got the Marth there and they're a dumbass computer, so they're not doing shit. But you visualize they're about to come do a dash tag. So you do your full, and you prepare, and then you have to have a certain level of experience with the game to do this, because if you don't have the level of experience, you can't run the simulation in your head. But he was basically doing this, like, with his imagination. His whole thing with shadowboxing was, I'm going to pretend that this fox is going to run at me in there, and then I'm going to practice blah, blah, blah. And then when he'd go and play a real person, he would kind of try that simulation and make sure that he was doing it correctly, and then he'd reassess. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the answer. I don't know. It's just so much easier in 2D fighters.
The human element's important too, though, right? Like that's the best kind of practice to try out anything that you're doing. You need another person there to do it. Like when we would teach people stuff in wrestling, right? Like like the technique of like practicing something is like one thing, but you need it on like what we would call like a live person. Like you need another person wrestling. So we would say like try it at 60% or something. Where like the defender does 60%, like for real, right, or whatever. It's like the same kind of idea where if there's no real feedback, like trying stuff like that is tough, right? The difference in an actual match is difficult. So training mode is there for that kind of stuff to like find solutions and things, but you got to grind it into your muscle memory against some moving, actual fighting.
Yeah. And then
hard.
I'm thinking about it in terms of like fighting games and stuff. And the other hard part is just the difficulty and execution yourself. So like, say you're trying to grind out like Falco. Like how to beat Falco lasers, coming back to that example with Bobby. And the funny thing about Falco lasers is like the most prominent example is like, so the Marth Falco matchup, maybe you guys don't know this, but so Marth has a very easy, if he dashes forward, he gets really low to the ground, and when you do the shield input, the shield pops up over him, and it's very easy to power shield the Falco laser. It's a huge timing window, unless the Falco shoots the laser at the lowest possible height to the ground. And if the Falco shoots the laser at the lowest possible height to the ground, then it would hit at a height where the power shield window is still just 1 frame. So maybe you're trying to practice this. You don't know this. You don't know that because there's a million different tiny little heights. Because again, the game is so analog that if you're a Marth player, maybe you don't even know. Like it's hard to execute the low laser. It's really hard.
Have to. Yeah, like even if you want to record it in training mode, you have to do perfect low to the ground lasers.
Right. And if you do it 1 frame too late, the laser doesn't even. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and if you're a Marth player, you might not even know how to do that. It's not easy to execute. So you're sitting here and you're like, oh, dude, my power shoots for lasers are fucking flawless, man. I power shoot them every time.
I got 100% of the time.
Yeah, 100% accuracy. And then you play a fucking really good Falco, and it just doesn't work anymore. And you're like,
you're 0 for 10. You're like,
yeah, what's going on? Like, I practiced this. This is ridiculous. Like, I must be playing bad today. And there's so many people. I realized this. This is a thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the chat that are Smashers have heard this excuse a million times. People always say, "Man, if I was playing better, I would have won." And I realized, there was this period of growth I had as a player where I was like, this excuse is not really valid. Like you got to think about other You can't just say, if I was playing better, I would have won. It's a very short-sighted way to think about the game because you're not accounting for all the other things that your opponent could be doing the decision making. Mm-hmm. But then I kind of had this realization where I was like, actually, you're kind of right a lot of the time. The people that say if I was playing better, I could have won, because the reality is they're probably drilling this certain thing where there's this tiny little variable, and if you do it slightly off, I mean, like, so ledge dash is a good example. The Falco laser is a good example, right? Where like your Mango's -6 down air. Mango says, "Oh, I was playing bad that day. I was sitting, and he doesn't really know how to verbalize how he was playing bad. But then you can go look at the tapes, and if you slow it down frame by frame, it turns out Mango's doing his dares a little bit too high. And now it's -7, and he's getting shield grab left and right. Now Mango's 1 frame off, but his whole game plan falls apart if he's 1 frame off, and it's not easy to really in the moment. It's not easy to calibrate and say to yourself, "Oh shit, I'm doing my down air like just a hair too late or a hair too early." But that's what's actually going on, and the reality is, if he was playing just a tiny little bit better, his whole game plan changes. And that's the tough thing about Melee, is that a lot of the time, it's actually true. SAJAM, I was talking about the example where going back to Mango and his -6 down air, if Mango's sitting there and he's playing a tournament set and he's just a frame too late and now it's -7, well, he's not even going to notice that in the moment because he's just 1 frame off. It's very hard, it's hard to calibrate. It's not like there's a buffer system or anything like that in Melee that you can use to buffer your input. So he's going to be just a tiny bit off, but he's not even going to know what's happening, but he's getting blown up. And that's why I think that's why Melee is such a fucking hard game to get really, really good at, is because you can have a very slightly bad day and your whole game plan falls apart and you don't really know why until you study the tapes.
I mean, it could be even one situation too, right?
One situation.
It could be a situation where like he's -7, but his opponent doesn't recognize it. Yeah, I mean, you could. I'm sure this has happened to you guys too. There's probably been a moment where like you block a dive kick or some move that's like sometimes plus, sometimes negative. It depends.
Right.
And you try to press after because you're like, oh yeah, he's negative there, and you're wrong, and you just die.
Yeah.
It's like one moment or situation where the answer is unclear, right? It's like, oh, I just made this massive mistake. And the faster the game speed is overall and the more mechanically difficult it is, the more likely it is that there are mistakes being made, right? Like I think a game like Melee, you should expect that there are mistakes in every match.
Oh,
right?
All the time.
With how fast it is and with how mechanically like deep it is, there will be mistakes in every single match. It's almost impossible for that not to be the case.
And I think, I think the two big things, not even the speed, but just the fact that it's analog, the fact that, you can jump forward and then start drifting back. And like the quicker you are from, say you want to jump right and then drift left, like the quicker your thumb moves from right to left, the cleaner you're going to be able to space out certain things. And so there's the analog aspect, and also the fact that there's no buffer, like no input buffer really matters, because are you really, if I'm trying to, do a reversal timing in like a Grand Blue versus, I can sit there and I can match a button. There's a 3-frame input buffer. I'm going to get it first frame. But in Melee, if I'm doing Shine Out of Shield, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm getting it out the first frame or not. Like, there's really no way to know.
Yeah.
I know if I did the Shine the first frame off the ground because I don't leave the ground, but I don't know if I did my jump first possible frame. It's really, and then from there, if I want to wave dash out, like, am I getting the wave dash as clean as possible? Probably not. It's just like there's so many variables, and I think it's funny because it's not really talked about that often. People talk about the speed a lot, but they don't talk about the other two things.
Yeah, I mean, it's the speed. Like the speed necessitates that there are mistakes, right? Like,
right.
The faster the game is, the faster it forces you to make decisions. The more likely you are to make the incorrect decision, and the more likely you are to make mistakes, right? Like if the game speed is not fast, then it can become solved. You know what I mean? Like you just sit there and you know exactly. My opponent has two options. They're both so slow that I can just wait and react to both of them. He's got a 50-frame jump and a 30-frame dash. Like I'm gonna just sit here. You know what I mean? Like the slower the game is, the more likely it is that it will boil down and become more like absolute in what the correct decision is. Right. So fighting games need to be fast enough to force you to sometimes make mistakes and like they're not to be for a difficult play to be like hard to achieve. And also there needs to be a breadth of options that makes it so that like, you can't just, there's only two things that are good. There needs to be enough there that, it keeps you interested and entertained and deep enough to be fascinating 10, 15, 20 years later.
Have you seen this happen where a particular fighting game gets like too reductive or like, people are just picking the right option too often?
Yeah, games can become extremely degenerate in that way, right? Especially if they're just the best option is the best option and there's no other, like you just do the most powerful thing every time. I think that, especially modern games are changed and patched a lot. So if something like that happens, there is a room to like reach in there and like try and, change things or make things different. But yeah, if the game is fast and the game is complex, then it's less likely to happen because it's more likely that, whatever the like a game like Marvel 3, right? Marvel 3 is a game that's incredibly degenerate.
Right.
But at the same time, there is an amount of precision and difficulty that makes it so that just doing this like, you know, degenerate option over and over is always the easiest thing on the planet. Like, it depends on the kind of game it is, right? And like whether there is some kind of controlled degeneracy or not. Like some characters just do two things. And that's it. No matter who they like, they got two good things. They're sticking to it.
You know, like end game Street Fighter 4. I mean, I didn't really play SF4. Was this kind of like? I mean, people complain a lot about characters like Alina and Rolento. Is that kind of what the game was heading towards? I guess with characters like that, is that kind of why?
I think those characters were mostly just like, to be honest, unfinished. Like the problem with those characters is they had tons of issues with hurt boxes where like you would try to hit them and like almost just didn't work. They had really bad consistency issues that were just like brutal to deal with. And yeah, I mean, Elena as a character is incredibly simple and very degenerate in her objectives, and like it beat so many things.
Did Justin
like,
play that character?
Yes, I did too. At time, that she's just that powerful. Like she was such a degenerate character. But there's a lot of characters like that. I think Street Fighter 4 like was a fun version, and I think it had a lot of different good versions. Ultra had some issues, but I still liked it a lot. I think there's a lot of like depth to the game still, but yeah, it can kind of end up that way. I mean, it's like Grand Blue. If you looked at Grand Blue the first week it came out, everybody's like, this game needs to be 4 out of 7, 5 out of whatever, right? It was like so incredibly fast. It's like wild, and then it slowed down, and then it's became a thing, and then it speeds up and it slows down. And now that people's defense is so solid, like it especially has slowed down quite a bit. But you can kind of tell if the game has enough room to, you know, really be that kind of way, or whether it's reductive in a sense that you're just like, these are the best options. Do these options.
Right. That's actually what I'm kind of liking about playing it. Actually, is the fact that I've never really played a game that's a little bit more reductive in terms of the option set. Where you know, because I've mostly been like a melee player through my competitive life in my 20s, and so it's kind of, I feel like going through that, and like with melee, there's always this sense that like you can find some new option or you can find some new answer. There's the option space is so wide. So I think for me as a player, it's actually been very good to play a game where the option set is a little smaller and the game speed is a little bit toned down, because like now I have to be really careful. It's like in a game like Melee, I can jump, and if I realize it was a bad jump midway through my jump, I can hold back and I'm out of there, or I can wave land on the platform, or I can fucking fast fall or not fast fall, or I can fast fall a little later so that I, you know, fuck their timing up, or I can fast fall a little later and like drift back at the same time, or I can drift forward because they think I'm gonna drift back. In a game like Grand Blue, if I do a bad jump, I did a bad jump, and I'm gonna get fucking anti-aired for 50% if I push a button. So it's actually you know, to me been really fun to sort of experience the other side of things. It's funny you say that about Street Fighter 4. You described the characters as kind of unfinished. I feel like the sense there is like if they patched the game one more time, even those characters might even just be fine.
Yeah, there was just some ugly, like the end of, you know, it's another team working on it. It's just a bit ugly at the end. But the characters are still fun, and I think Ultra was still a fun version. Like whether it's the best version of Street Fighter 4 or not, I don't know. But I still like that game a lot. I remember at the end of that version, I remember really still liking Street Fighter 4 quite a lot before Street Fighter 5 came out, and people were like, "Boo, Ultra sucks! This game is bad, blah blah." And then obviously Street Fighter 5 comes out. We want Ultra Street Fighter 4. Yeah. It's people, you know.
There were so many characters I hated by the end of Ultra, though.
Yeah,
Capri, all the dive kick characters. Rolento, Fuerte, like all the kind of like, what is even happening characters.
Fuerte was in from the beginning, right? I feel like people hated Fuerte since day one Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, he's a very frustrating thing to fight against. I mean, he's a character that when you fight from round one fight, everything's different. It's not like anything else you fight against. So, and you know, in that kind of controlled chaos, the Fuerte player is way more comfortable. So just by the nature of what you're doing, it's this guy's gonna be flying around the screen, and you're like, it's like, you know, that GIF of like Matt Damon in Saving Private Ryan where he's like he's got the helmet and he's like crying and there's like explosions. That's me. Like I don't know what's happening. Shit. It's bad. I'm ducking for cover, and he's Tostada pressing, and I'm just I
had no idea what was happening with that character.
Yeah. You just like scrambled and hoped for the best, right? Like you just, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
That's super funny. Well, we're coming up on 3. I mean, we went pretty long. We don't really have a fixed length for these, but I think we can start wrapping up.
Oh God, I thought it was like it had just hit 2 hours.
Dude, it fucking that's the crazy. It just fucking sometimes it just the time just flies, man.
One thing I wanted to ask, kind of on that topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
The word commitment comes to mind. Like I feel like in Melee, there's just so few things that you are like committed to. I've been wondering for a while if that's like the main difference in like how it feels. I feel like if somebody throws a fireball and you jump, both players feel that, like, you know, the person who jumped won the interaction for like a second and then punish. It's like, it's just so, like, the moves are so committed. I guess I even feel like grab is a move in Melee where it's got like a lot of, you know what I mean? It's like one of the more committal moves. But it's not that much, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's not that long.
Yeah,
grab doesn't feel like you threw a fireball and the other person jumped. That feels terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny about that too is like, have you ever, like, you know, when you like play Melee and you say like, oh, this move is like, I don't know, it's like 20 frames. You can like see it and deal with it. Or, you know, when people say stuff like that, have you ever not anti-aired a jump?
Yeah.
In like Street Fighter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Street Fighter jumps like 40 frames, bro. Like it's like 45. Like when people say stuff like, yo, this 20 frame move, you got to see it every time. If you've ever not anti-aired a 45 frame jump, you understand the stress that games put on you. And like, yeah, like a game like Melee, some things you don't have to commit to and you can like fly around and you're super fast and stuff, right? But like, yeah, in those moments where you do overcommit or when people punish you, like, you know, the game speed and stuff is just so hectic that it's like really impressive when people can, like, they just see the frame. You know what I mean? Like people say they can see the frames. It's kind of like when people actually do maneuver in that way, it is like super impressive. And that's why I love versus games too. I don't only play, like what Toph mentioned about like playing like Grand Blue and then playing Melee and the speed difference. It's why I love playing games that are fast and slow, both of them, right? Because they just appeal to you at different times and in different ways. Sometimes you just want a match that's like slow and very grindy and like it's interesting in its own way. And sometimes you want chaos, right? You want a game to be fast and to like see players move and do mechanically impressive things in like an incredibly fast amount of time and just be like, I don't even know how that's possible. And then sometimes Justin Wong sits there and hits jab for like 10 minutes. This guy's a cheater, dude. Like, how does he do it? Like, both are fascinating for their own ways, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I know what you, about commitment. It's like the same when you watch Dragon Ball or Marvel or like some very fast game, right? Where like, if you jump forward and something's wrong, you air dash back and you like throw a fireball and you call an assist and like the whole screen is filled with stuff and you're just like moving and grooving and everything's fine. And then there's Street Fighter where you hit a sweep and you're like, I'm dead. I shouldn't have even hit. Like, I have 6 buttons and I hit the wrong one. How is that possible? I only have 6 options. Like, it's how did I mess that up?
Yeah. I feel like I was one of those players in Melee where I was the person who was the kid you were mentioning before, where it's like, oh no, I've got bulletproof vest, blah, blah, blah. Like, I thought that the opponent could react to everything. I didn't really respect how hard it is to react to things. But then I played Street Fighter and I was like, damn. Yeah, this fool jumped and I like just I couldn't react. Like, it's so slow. Like, why do I think I can react to like, Fox shield pressure? I can't. Yeah,
you're just a human. You're trying your best, right? Like you have to realize that's the most important thing too. Is I think about that a lot. Like when you watch fighting games, like I'm like this on commentary a lot too. Is you have to, like, when people make mistakes or people try something and they're looking for something and it doesn't work out, you have to credit what they were looking for, even, right? Because there's just so much that could happen in the game that you have to be like, yeah, I get why he tried that. He was looking for this, or his opponent was looking for this, and there's so much going on. You have to give the players credit for all the stuff that's flying around in their heads. It's tough, man.
Honestly, that was my biggest pet peeve. Like, that's, I think still, but especially, I don't know, I guess I noticed it more in the past, but people would be like, oh yeah, this person like chose the wrong option, or they did something that was stupid. And I always would get so mad because it was like, okay, in so many situations, what they did was like really smart. Also, like in this situation, sometimes you could tell like they were going for something, but I don't know, especially in the past, I could feel that they like missed the timing of something, and so something else came out. And it's like, that's not even what they were trying to do.
Yeah, as a commentator, I hate when people the two things is like, one, just tearing down player decisions, right? Especially like, dude, they're in the top 8 and you're not, right? Like, clearly one of them is making much better decisions overall. And the second thing is self-inserting. Like, bro, I would have totally anti-aired that jump, that 45 frame. Like, it's like, dude, shut up. You can't even. It's like, it's like, for me, it's when a decision like that happens, it's what did he do? Did he try this and got an input error and got that? Was he looking for this? Like, what was the logic behind the decision, and what did his opponent do? And like, you have to give. For me, it's like you give credit either way, right? It's like, this is why this guy tried this, and this is why he tried that, and you can see why both levels of thinking make sense, right? If they're at that level where they're playing the best people in the world, they're smart enough to make decisions that make sense. It's just our job to translate the logic of them to someone else.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the context. It's like everything else you said. I mean, there's conditioning, and there's probably a reason that he guessed a certain option or that he was looking for a certain thing. It's like your Bonchan example. Like the reason you're able to call out what he's probably going to do is because you've actually watched the footage and you know what he's looking for.
Yeah, you know what's most likely, right? Like you can just say like, yeah, in this moment he's looking for this. Like it was the situation was like G had V trigger, and when he has V trigger, he does his low smash into V trigger like every time, right? And the best answer where he was is jump forward, and like he's just a dude, but I played against G, right? I know this dude's gonna jump, like he's gonna do the thing. You know what it is, like it's the same thing. Somebody in the chat brought up one of my favorite things is too. I'm sure you guys have done this when somebody like does something that's so absurd, and you're like, bro, I got hit. Like that would have that decision was. How did you even think of that? I would have. I'm an idiot. I would have died. Right? Like that self-inserting and like that kind of way, I think is really like everybody in the chat. You know, when you say like chat, would you have blocked that? And the chat's like, hell no. What was that? Like that feels great. I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
it's like the communal understanding that guy's way too good, and he's in some way is that much better than all of us.
Yeah. Like someone covers like they're like scrapping, and all of a sudden someone goes for a roll and it just gets called out immediately. It's like, oh, I would have rolled there too. None would have need me there too, you know, kind of thing.
You're like, that's the exact option I would have done, and
it happens too, right? Because you can actually feel it.
You can feel it,
right? You literally feel like, okay, that's literally what I would have done there, and it almost wakes you up when it gets, because nobody ever does that option. It's like, whoa, I got
it. So funny.
You know, it's like, you know, when you even say that to you, like, yeah, the safest thing to do here is like DI this way, or do like, you know what I mean? And then they just like destroy someone for doing it, and you're like, okay, well, it's not safe at all if you're the best. Like, I take it back. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a really good way to say that, actually.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well, if you're playing against the best player in the world, don't do it. But if you're playing against everybody else, it's generally an okay option, right? Like, oh, jeez. That feels so good. When you just like say something and someone gets destroyed for it, you're like, all right, well, they thought what I thought. And apparently we're both wrong.
Yeah, right. I mean, at least me and this guy see eye to eye. Even if this guy's better than both of us, you know, right now. But yeah, it's super duper funny.
He got us both. You're like, all right, you got us both, chat. My bad.
Yep. Yeah, I love commentating, and I love fighting games.
So what did we talk about today?
We talked about a lot of stuff. I think when we upload onto YouTube, I'm probably gonna go through. I'm gonna timestamp the different, because I feel like we had like 5 little beats we had. I don't know. I kind of threw up the number. Five sounded right. I feel like we talked about like 5. We talked about commentary for like an hour, like 45 minutes, and then we talked about some gameplay stuff. I don't know, man. I'm gonna go through the VOD. I'm gonna annotate it.
Learning
content.
We talked about learning, the different styles of learning. Yep.
Learning.
Yeah, we talked about content.
I think learning is sick. I would love to learn more about learning, because I think I got a garbage learning mindset that's getting much better.
I would love to talk to you about learning.
I think since COVID, for me, I don't know about you guys, but like, I don't know, just being home, like just so much in life has changed. I feel like I'm just in a more flexible place, and like I'm kind of not doing the same bad habit stuff like life-wise as I did for the past however many years, you know.
Dude,
definitely.
The coolest thing in the world is learning how to learn, to be honest with you. Because like once you get it, you can learn anything, right? Like that's the best feel. Like once you teach yourself to learn, and like the process is always the same.
Yeah, and we're always doing it, right?
Yeah,
we're always doing it.
Like no matter what it is, right? Because after this is over, you're gonna like go look at some new article or game or thing, and there's gonna be some theory you've never heard of or something. You're like, oh, I gotta look this up, and you gotta learn about some new thing, and you gotta like, you know, every day you're learning something, right? So yeah, it is. That's why I wanted to be a teacher, I think, because
I just feel like it's the healthiest way to look at everything you're doing too, you know? Like if you're not looking at it like it's a learning process, then you're either judging yourself or like thinking that you're hot shit when you probably aren't, which is just setting yourself up for the fall, you know?
Yeah.
It's either way.
It's like so hard to know how much you don't know until you learn, right? Like you hit that point, you know, when you're in the beginning, you're like, I know everything. And then you hit the middle and you're like, oh God, like there's so much to learn. And then at the very, like you talk to the people who are like the best at something and they're like, I have no idea how that works. And you're
that's exactly, that's the fucking mysterious record. That's the mysterious record, dude, of immovable wisdom.
Yeah.
The Zen master, he says that, you know, like, it's like you take someone who doesn't know how to fight and they get into a street fight, they're just throwing their punches. Right, I'm doing whatever I can to survive. And then you take the guy, you know, you go around the circle, and now you're down here, and this is the guy that's trained a little bit, and he's got some techniques, and he's got to think about his techniques. He's like, okay, I got to do this, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to the master, and the master has come full circle. He's a master, and he's just punching and kicking again. He's good at it because he internalized it, but he's not thinking about it anymore. He's just like the beginner because neither one of them is thinking about it. They're just punching and kicking.
Yeah. It's just in his blood, dude. He knows what to do.
Exactly, and it's just a fucking and everything's like that. Yeah, the internalizing is the best. You definitely feel the worst when you're right at the middle, when you're at the lowest point because the circle's like this, and when you're at this point in the circle, You feel the worst because you feel like you don't know shit, but then you come around and you're punching the king again. It feels fucking great. You're doing your 30-second long combos. It's a good feeling.
You know, thinking before you have to do everything sucks so bad.
Oh, it sucks so
like
bad.
when you're stuck in that spot, you're like, what am I supposed to do here? Oh yeah, I gotta. It's too late. Like,
someone's mixing you up, and you're like, how do I block this mix up again? You already got opened up. Like it's
dead.
Yeah. It's like anything else. All right.
I hella want to practice now, though. I'll tell you that.
I'm gonna go watch that Corey video probably after this.
It's great. I encourage you guys to check it out. Yeah.
I'll do that too.
Corey's really good. If any of you guys in the stream aren't following Corey Gaming on YouTube, subscribed.
His next video is going to be about commentary, by the way.
Ooh, that's exciting. I'm really I'm into that. I like commentary.
Yeah, he's been like getting into it, and he told me he like came on my podcast and was like, "Yeah, the next video is going to be about commentary and like different commentators in different fields." And like, he's like, "I think commentary is so fascinating, so I want to do a video on it." And I was like, "Hell yeah!"
Yeah, that's really cool.
It is really fascinating. I feel like the kind of vibe. It's like, I don't know. Just feel like the more that we're kind of talking about a spectrum where you could be super buttoned up and analytical, you could be like super homey or whatever. I feel like we talk about that a lot of Melee, homey commentary.
Yeah.
And they both seem good. It's like not one's better than the other. It's like situation. I don't know.
That's what's cool though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that note, do we have a sign off? What do we do, Toph?
Well, last time I'm probably gonna do the same thing I did last time, which is I'm gonna read the list of Patreon subscribers. Except last time I read all of them, which took a long time, and then Spencer told me, "Hey, you can just read the ones above like however much money." I was like, "Okay, I'll just do that, and I'll put the rest." So I got a little graphic. I'm gonna throw it up, and then I'm gonna read the ones. Huh? Say that again.
I said thanks to the patrons.
Thanks to the patrons. Yes, thank you. I know the show's been dry. I know the show's been dry in quarantine. I've been trying to do more, streams of this sort of nature, modeling myself after. If you guys don't follow SAJAM on Twitch, you should. He does really. If you enjoyed everything we talked about today, he does talks like this all the time. When's the next stream you're doing, SAJAM? Probably
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
12:30 to 4:30 ish is usually my stream schedule every day. I talk until I can't talk anymore, basically.
You say you do 12:30 to 4:30?
Yeah,
that's so great. I've been trying to start streaming around 4:30 to 5 every day. So you guys could just do the fucking gauntlet. SAJAM into me.
Well. Dude, I mean, on a quick tangent about content, sometimes I don't even know who to host after. I like look around, I'm like, no one's stream. Like, I want to send people somewhere where they can learn cool stuff and talk with someone who's cool. So
okay,
it's important to you got to send your viewers somewhere where you would watch yourself.
For sure,
absolutely. I will try to. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you, so you have someone to throw to. Yeah, follow SAJAM. Oh man, I'm sorry, Luna just tried to link you in all these different platforms, but it all turned into one big word.
No.
But yeah, twitter.com/SAJAM, twitch.tv/SAJAM. Definitely follow him on those. And yeah, I don't know. We're definitely gonna upload this to YouTube. We'll either cut it up or I'll just like timestamp like the different little topics we had, because I think we had. Dude, I miss when Spencer would do the lower thirds for us, and every time we switch topics, Spencer would just like change the lower thirds. That's so godlike, dude.
He's a god, dude. I love Spencer so much.
Nah, he's so great. I wonder what he's doing.
I miss him.
I do miss him. Yeah, I miss him a lot. I feel like I don't see him very often. Even at events, you do feel like I feel like I never see Spencer, except like once on Sunday.
I always go backstage and talk to the people there. Always.
Yeah, but like you only get to see them for that little bit. You don't see them like through the whole event. It's not the.
You got to check in on, dude. Their job is so much harder than ours.
It's so much harder.
So I always come in and I'm like, how are you guys doing? You guys doing okay? Any fires? What? Tell me about it. You know what I mean? I want to be like, hey, how's it going? It warms me up. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. I
do
really
nice production. They got the bad job, dude.
I do the opposite of that. I make their lives hard. I'm actually the worst. I don't even understand.
Well, they're probably sharper because of people like you, Bobby.
How do I live with myself?
I try to be so nice.
Sharper, dude. I'm like, I'm like making fires for them.
We got to do good cop, bad cop. Like you go back there and just mess everything up.
Unplug all the wires.
Yeah. He's just unplugging shit.
I want to keep them on their toes.
Yeah.
Letting them know, Hey, you remember this? You remember that?
To be fair, you have to. Somebody said like Scar screams at Gimmer. You got to yell at them sometimes. Like when they leave their mics on, you gotta let them know.
I love it. Well, I think the funny thing is Gimmer and Spencer and Scar have kind of built up that level of whatever camaraderie or whatever, where it's kind of expected at this point. So I think
in my opinion, it's like the viewer. If I know the viewers see it. It's like the only cool way to play it off is to just acknowledge it and like make it a joke.
Yeah.
if you're apologizing for it, it's just like weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
To me, it feels weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like making.
I'm not trying to be something that we're not. I mean, we're not like, we're good. Don't get me wrong.
You got to be honest.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
You just got to tell them. Yeah, you just got to tell them.
Yeah.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes you got to be like, chat, hold on. Hey, Spencer, shut up. All right, I don't care what you had for dinner last night. I'm trying to watch this match. And then he goes, fuck you, Steve. And then you go back to like, all right, I'm going.
How did you do that so good? Oh my God. You've got the best. Can you do a Hanzo impression? Because you've done your.
That's what he's always like. He's just waving his arms around. He's just a little fella running around. He just cracks me up. Carter's he's something. He's something. Yeah, and Spencer always gets in your ears and he goes, "Hello, gamers," and you're like, "All right, what up, Spencer?
What up, Spencer?
How's it going, man?" Shit cracks me up.
Yeah, Spencer and Seg actually have very similar voices, huh?
Seg, man.
How did that happen?
His voice just hurts me to listen to, but it's also a little soothing, I think.
Seg's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a combo.
Yeah.
I miss Spencer so much. I just message him and I'm like, hey, what do you think of this laptop? I don't care. But I'm just, I want to see how he's doing.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, it's all right. But if you just checked out this one, I'm like, no, tell me more. Like, I just gotta see how he's doing.
I love how he's got opinions on every piece of hardware on the
planet. Don't upload this.
Such helpful responses. It's so crazy.
Okay, he's always got something. Don't tell him I just message him to see how he's doing. I want to keep up the facade that I'm interested, or he'll stop answering.
Shit. Yeah, he'll stop answering. That's so funny, dude. That's so funny. Yeah, that was perfect. I don't know how you did that Spencer impression. It's so good.
I hear his voice all the time. He never mutes his mic when we're commentating. I just, shut up, Spencer. Jesus. Yeah. I got to talk to the people.
Oh man. Okay, we're gonna I'll read the page. I'll read the pages. If you guys want to we're gonna be doing more Scar and Toph shows. We'll probably try to do. I don't know, Bobby. What do you want to do? Every 2 weeks? Every 3 weeks? We'll try to put something together. Every couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
we do every 2 weeks.
I'm thinking we'll probably get Drug Fox for the next one. I'm gonna try to hit up Drug Fox.
We gotta get into a rhythm.
Yeah, that's the thing. Once we're in a rhythm, it's smooth sailing. It's all about the rhythm. Well, I've been streaming a lot, so I can just throw it together at this point.
I know, but I feel like that's our greatest curse. We have too many options now.
Too many options. Oh, it's the fucking we gotta go to a simpler option set,
and so we keep just not doing it. Like we gotta make pretend that we have limited options.
We gotta go into Street Fighter Grand Blue mode, where now you can only dash and you can jump.
Yeah.
No more wave landing on we're wave landing on the platforms all day. That's why we're never coming down to the ground and doing our show.
When I started doing a podcast on Fridays and everybody was home, right? So I was like, I can just get anybody. I couldn't find anybody. That was that. I kept asking people, and they're like, "Oh no, I gotta take my cat for a walk the whole day." Like, actually,
it's like what the.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh, I got a COVID sunbathe in that hours," and you're like, "Nah, fair enough."
yeah, true.
Tough.
It was good talking to you, SAJAM. Thank you so much for coming on our humble show.
That was great. I always, I love listening to both of you guys do your thing and appreciate the kind of realness that you guys both bring to the table, right? So it's nice to actually this is, maybe people don't know, the first time that I think I've sat down and talked with Bobby, like for real. So
yeah,
it's very nice. Thanks for having me on, guys. I've watched the show quite a bit, so
I remember the Twitch days. You were in the chat like every week. It's awesome. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, fighting game content sucks, man. You got to look at Jason sometime to find stuff that's fascinating, and nobody else was doing anything that was decent. So you're like,
who's Jason?
Fighting game adjacent, I'm saying.
Jason,
not Jason.
I thought you said you gotta look at Jason. No one else is doing anything good. I was like, is
Jason? Oh, dude, he's crushing it.
Is his name Jason?
Hey, Jason, if you're out there, you're crushing it, dude.
Keep doing it. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Keep doing what you're doing.
That's really
to all you Jasons out there.
Yeah, to all you Jasons.
Big fan.
Let the pages know that we love them.
Kelly, I will. I'll do the Patreon shout outs now. You guys can pop off or whatever if you want.
I love you, Toph.
All right, I love you, man. Peace out.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Thanks for having me. Peace out, everybody. Thanks to the patrons.
Well, yeah. Patrons like Frederico Vargas. That was a SAJAM. That was a SAJAM segue. I hope you guys saw what I just did there. Frederico Vargas, IGP. Actually, I actually got okay. So last time I did the Patreon shout outs, and then Spencer said, you know what, guys, you don't need to read every single fucking name on the whole fucking goddamn thing because there's too many of them. and you can just read like the higher level. Because I read all these little small ones you see. I can't even barely. I think that says Adam King. Adam King's homie, but I'm not going to read him this time, except I did. But, oh, is the image, I feel like, okay, no, yeah, there we go. Thanks to our patrons, Frederico Vargas and IGP, the two $50 Grand Smasher tier patrons. At $25, a bag of Vicodin, Alpharad, yes, the Alpharad, a paying $25 subscriber for pretty much the entirety of the reads. Alpharad, I don't know why you've given us so much money. You're such a godlike person, but thank you so much. Robert Choi, Savannareth Duke, David Sealman, sorry, Nick Goodman, Truth's Advocate, and a bag of Vicodin. I think I already read a bag of Vicodin. And at the $10 level, the platinum level, we got Aiden White. This is the last level I'm going to read, by the way, so I'm going to go through this one fast. Okay, here we go. Aiden White, Alex Strong, Amelin Yangar, Andrew Strout, Anthony Del Valle, Brad Schaefer, Brandon Glenn, Braxton Hall, Brian McClanson, McCallum Bisping. Bisping sounds like a verb. Chris Luden, Colin D. Millett, Carlton Kunzeman, Connor Familton, Daniel Entz, Darren Ging, Dev2000, Duncan Smith, Eric Rhodes, Fernando Cavadagna, Frank, Kevin, Happy Super Smash Bros. Melee, Henry Sandstorm, Hunter Cross J. Michael Bonin. Oh, that's two people. Whatever. Jake Sabarin, Jericho, JJ Guns 98 John Solon, JJ Guns 98 John Solon. That's probably two people. JJ Guns 98. It's not JJ Guns 98 John and then Solon. It's JJ Guns 98. There's probably supposed to be a space there and then John Solon. Joseph Kuhn, Joshua B, Kevin McGuffin, Lava, Marco, Eilers, Mark, Naruto, Nauta, Martin Russo, Matt Perez, Matthew Cashwell, Max Golden, Michael Saltzman, Mr. Naps, Mr. Ice-T, Nathan Elda, Naranik Bukwiochio, Omni, Paul Bolerman, Robert Hornberger, Sean Sanchez, Sean Tachen, Shaman Frank, Shiv Mangru, Simon Sver, Skylar Sokol, Timothy Yang, Travis Bleda, and Zachary Rice. Thank you so much to all you guys for fucking supporting us. If you guys want to subscribe to the Patreon, please feel free to do so over at patreon.com/thereads. It helps us buy things like cameras and lighting. That's why my lighting got a bit of a step up recently. My microphone. I would say flying out guests. We're not flying out guests right now. We're all doing it from the comfort of our own homes. But if you guys want to support, of course, I've been streaming more or less every day. I'm probably going to be streaming at roughly 5 p.m., 4:30. I'll probably try to do 4:30 now that I know SAJAM ends around 4:30. But every weekday and most weekend days now, maybe I should have just read everyone, man. I feel like the names towards the end of that platinum tier, those names started getting fucked up. There's Shiv Magru, Simon Sver, and Skylar Sokol. That was a tough run right there. If you're not following already, please do. Follow SAJAM on all social media. If you want to subscribe to me, I'm trying to do this content thing full-time for the time being. Follow the YouTube as well, youtube.com/TophBBQ. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, again, for tuning in. This was a blast. We went longer than I think we've done. I think this was the longest Garden Toph show we had, but it didn't even feel, to me, doing it really didn't even feel that long because to me, the discussion was just so fascinating. SAJAM, I think, is such a, he does, these sorts of talks, pretty much every day. He does, fighting game talks. I did one yesterday that was really fun. I'm going to try to get that on YouTube as well. I'm trying to call them, Toph Talks. It's the alliteration thing. I think alliteration just makes things kind of roll off the tongue better. But I'm trying to do these Toph Talks more often as well. I'm probably going to start a lot of my streams with them. So, yeah, I mean, if you guys enjoy what I'm doing, subscription's always appreciated. I will keep the sub reading for the YouTube. Do not worry. And, yeah, I mean, guys, this was great. All right, who are we hosting?